The gunshot echoes through the cathedral before the bride can say, "I do." Blood pools on white marble. A woman in a wedding dress stands frozen, veil lifted, bruises blooming purple beneath her makeup. The groom, Chicago's most dangerous man, sees them and understands. He just married a war he didn't start. This is the story of Oilia Vance, who survived hell in silk and lace, and Kael Varelli, who learned that some enemies sleep in your bed. Stay until the end. Hit that like button. Drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. The February wind cut through Chicago like a blade looking for bone. Oilia Vance stood in the bridal suite of the Cathedral of Saints and Sinners, a name someone with a dark sense of humor had given the converted warehouse on the south side, and tried to remember how to breathe. Her hands shook as she gripped the vanity edge. The makeup artist had left 10 minutes ago. The door was locked. She had maybe 5 minutes before someone came looking. 5 minutes to decide if she was going to run. The dress was beautiful. That was the sick joke of it all. Ivory silk that cost more than her father had made in a year before he'd gambled it all away and sold her like livestock to settle his debts. The bodice fit perfectly, custom tailored to hide the finger-shaped bruises on her ribs. Long sleeves covered the marks on her wrists. The veil would shadow her face just enough. She looked like every girl's dream. She felt like a corpse in expensive fabric. A knock rattled the door. 10 minutes, Miss Vance? Miss. Not for much longer. In 10 minutes, she'd be Mrs. Kael Varelli, property of the Varelli family. The most feared crime empire in Chicago, maybe in the whole Midwest. Her father had made his deal with the devil, and she was the currency. Oilia pressed her palms flat against the mirror. Her reflection stared back, pale skin, dark eyes too wide, lips pressed bloodless. She looked terrified. She was terrified. But that wasn't new. Fear had been her constant companion for so long she'd stopped remembering what calm felt like. The bruises on her ribs throbbed. 3 weeks old, fading from purple to that sick yellow-green. Lucien Dragor's parting gift before she'd been packed up and shipped off to her new husband. Lucien, her father's business partner, the man who'd smiled at family dinners and cornered her in hallways since she was 16. The man who'd made sure she understood exactly what happened to girls who talked. She touched her side gently, wincing. Lucien had friends everywhere, even in the Varelli organization, especially there. He'd made that clear the last time. You think marriage will save you? Kael Varelli doesn't care about broken girls. He'll use you up and toss you aside. And when he does, I'll be waiting. Another knock. Harder. Miss Vance? It's time. Oilia closed her eyes. Tried to find something inside herself that felt like courage. Found only exhaustion and a desperate fraying hope that maybe Kael Varelli would be different. Maybe he wouldn't notice. Maybe she could disappear into the massive Varelli estate and become invisible. Survive. That was all she'd ever done. Survive. She unlocked the door. A tick. The cathedral was full of men in expensive suits and women dripping diamonds. No one smiled. This wasn't a celebration. It was a business transaction. A merger sealed in vows instead of signatures. The Vance family's remaining connections and territory folded into the Varelli empire. Oilia was the paperwork that made it legal. She walked down the aisle alone. Her father wasn't there. He'd taken his payout and disappeared 3 days ago. No one gave her away because no one wanted to claim responsibility. Kael Varelli waited at the altar. Oilia had seen photos. They didn't do him justice, or maybe they did, and that was the problem. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair cut sharp and eyes the color of winter ice. 32 years old. Heir to an empire built on blood and silence. The rumors said he'd killed his first man at 17, that he ran the Varelli operations with surgical precision and zero mercy, that he'd once dismantled a rival organization so thoroughly their name was erased from Chicago's underworld like it had never existed. He watched her approach with the expression of a man evaluating livestock. Oilia's stomach twisted. She kept her eyes down, focused on not tripping, on breathing, on making it through the next 5 minutes and then the next, and then the next. The officiant, some judge the Varellis kept on permanent payroll, droned through the ceremony. Oilia heard maybe one word in 3. Her ears rang, her vision tunneled. She felt like she was watching this happen to someone else. Do you, Oilia Marie Vance, take this man, I do. Her voice came out steady, small miracle. Do you, Kael Antonio Varelli? I do. Flat, emotionless, like he was signing a contract. You may kiss the bride. Kael stepped closer. Oilia's heart hammered. He lifted the veil slowly and she watched his eyes track across her face, saw the exact moment he registered the makeup not quite thick enough to hide the shadow of a bruise along her jaw, saw his expression shift, not to anger, but to something colder. Assessment. He leaned in. She flinched. It was involuntary. Instinct. A full-body recoil she couldn't control. Kael stopped. His eyes narrowed. The cathedral went silent. Oilia's breath caught. She'd already screwed this up, and they weren't even married 30 seconds. Her mind raced, apologize, smile, play it off. But her throat had locked up. Please, she whispered, so quiet only he could hear. Please don't hurt me. Something flickered across Kael's face, too fast to read. He pressed a kiss to her forehead, chaste, cold, and turned to face the crowd. Done, he said. The crowd erupted in polite applause. Oilia stood frozen, veil still lifted, trying to understand what had just happened. Kael took her hand, his grip firm but not painful, and led her back down the aisle. She was married. She was Mrs. Varelli. She was so thoroughly screwed. Pasquite. The reception was held at the Varelli estate, a sprawling mansion on the North Shore that looked like old money and smelled like fresh violence. Oilia had never seen anything like it. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, art on the walls that probably cost more than entire neighborhoods. It was beautiful and cold and felt like a mausoleum. Kael deposited her at the head table and disappeared into the crowd. Oilia sat alone, hands folded in her lap, while people she'd never met toasted to her future. No one spoke to her directly. She was a prop. Decoration. Evidence that the merger was complete. She picked at the food on her plate. Couldn't eat. Her ribs hurt. Her jaw ached where she'd been clenching it for hours. She wanted to disappear, wanted to find a bathroom and lock herself in and just breathe for 5 minutes without someone watching. You look terrified. Oilia jerked her head up. A woman stood beside her chair, late 20s, sharp features, designer dress that somehow looked dangerous. She held 2 champagne flutes. I'm fine, Oilia managed. No, you're not. The woman set one glass in front of Oilia. I'm Mira, Kael's cousin, and you look like you're about to bolt. Oilia's fingers tightened around the stem of the glass. I'm just tired. You're scared. Mira pulled out the chair beside her and sat, uninvited. Look, I get it. This family is a nightmare, but Kael's not… She paused. He's not like the others. What's he like? The question slipped out before Oilia could stop it. Mira considered her. Cold, controlled. He doesn't do anything without a reason, but he's not cruel for fun. That's something. It wasn't reassuring. Oilia looked down at her champagne, watching bubbles rise and burst. Word of advice, Mira continued, voice dropping. Don't lie to him. He can smell bullshit from 3 states away. And don't try to manipulate him. He'll cut you loose faster than you can blink. I'm not trying to manipulate anyone, Oilia said quietly. I just want to survive this. Mira's expression softened a fraction. Then be honest about whatever you're running from, because he's going to figure it out eventually, and it'll go better if you tell him first. She stood and drained her champagne. Welcome to the family, Oilia. Try not to get yourself killed. She walked away, leaving Oilia alone again with her untouched glass and a knot of dread in her chest. The reception dragged on for hours. Speeches, toasts, business deals negotiated in corners while champagne flowed. Oilia smiled when required and said nothing. Her face ached from holding the expression. Kael reappeared near midnight. He didn't ask, just took her hand and pulled her toward the main staircase. Oilia's pulse spiked. She followed because refusing wasn't an option. The second floor was quieter. Kael led her down a long hallway lined with doors, stopped at the last one, and pushed it open. Your room, he said. Oilia blinked. My room? You need something. Use the phone. Someone will come. He started to turn away. Wait! The word burst out. Kael stopped, looked back. Oilia's mind scrambled. We're not sharing a bed? No. His expression was unreadable. I don't sleep with people who flinch when I touch them. Heat flooded her face. Shame and relief tangled together. I'm sorry. I didn't mean... Save it. Kael's voice was flat. Whatever you're running from, it's your business. Until it becomes mine. Get some sleep. He walked away, footsteps echoing down the hall. Oilia stood in the doorway of her new room. Massive bed, silk sheets, windows overlooking the estate grounds, and tried to process what had just happened. Kael Virelli, the most feared man in Chicago, had just given her space, privacy, a locked door between them. She didn't trust it, couldn't. But she stepped inside anyway and turned the lock with shaking hands. The room was beautiful. She hated it. It felt like a gilded cage. Oilia sank onto the bed and let herself shake. The adrenaline that had been holding her together for hours drained away all at once, leaving her hollow and exhausted. She should change, take off the dress. But she couldn't make herself move. She lay back against the pillows, still in her wedding gown, and stared at the ceiling. This was her life now. Mrs. Kael Virelli, trapped in a mansion full of criminals, married to a man who looked at her like she was a problem to solve. And somewhere out there, Lucian Dryagor was watching, waiting. Oilia closed her eyes and tried not to think about what came next. Basant. She didn't sleep that night, or the next. By the third night in the Virelli estate, Oilia was running on fumes and coffee and the kind of exhaustion that made the world feel underwater. Kael kept his distance. She saw him at breakfast sometimes, silent meals where he read reports and she pushed food around her plate. He asked no questions, made no demands. It should have been a relief. Instead, it put her on edge, waiting for the other shoe to drop. The estate was massive. Oilia spent her days exploring, mapping exits, learning the rhythms of the house. The guards changed shifts at 6. The kitchen staff arrived at 5. There were cameras everywhere except the library and her bedroom. The garage held 6 cars. The gates were always locked. She cataloged it all in her head. Escape routes, backup plans, ways out if everything went wrong. Because it would go wrong. It always did. On the 4th night, the nightmares started. Oilia jolted awake at 2 a.m., gasping, Lucian's hands around her throat in her mind, even though her room was empty. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Sweat soaked through her nightshirt. She couldn't breathe right. She stumbled to the bathroom and splashed cold water on her face, stared at her reflection, pale, haunted, bruises fading, but still visible in the harsh light. She looked like a ghost, felt like one. A knock on the bedroom door made her jump. Mrs. Virelli? A man's voice. Unfamiliar. Oilia's throat closed. She said nothing. Mr. Virelli sent me to check on you. We heard... I'm fine. Her voice cracked. I'm fine. Go away. Silence. Then footsteps retreating. Oilia sank to the bathroom floor and wrapped her arms around her knees. They were watching, listening. Even here, even in her locked room, she wasn't safe. She stayed there until dawn, shivering on cold tile, and tried to remember what safety had ever felt like. Breakfast the next morning was tense. Kael sat across from her, drinking black coffee and reading something on his tablet. He looked up once, eyes tracking over her face. You look like hell, he said flatly. Thanks. Oilia reached for her own coffee, hands steadier than yesterday. Small victories. Nightmares? She froze, cup halfway to her lips. How did you, Security heard you. Sent someone to check. Kael's expression didn't change. You want to talk about it? No. Fine. He went back to his tablet. Oilia set down her cup. Why do you care? That got his attention. Kael looked at her, really looked, the kind of assessment that felt like being x-rayed. You're my wife. That makes you my responsibility. I'm a business arrangement, Oilia shot back. The words came out sharper than intended. Exhaustion made her reckless. You said it yourself. This is a merger. I'm just the paperwork. Kael's jaw tightened. He set down the tablet. You want honesty? Fine. I didn't want this marriage. I don't need a wife. But we're here now and I don't do things halfway. So yeah, you're my responsibility. That means you're under my protection. And that means I need to know what the hell you're so scared of. Oilia's pulse hammered. She couldn't tell him. Couldn't say Lucian's name out loud because speaking it felt like summoning a demon. And Lucian had made it clear. If she talked, if she told anyone, he would know. He had eyes everywhere. I'm not scared, she lied. Kale laughed. It was a harsh, humorless sound. You flinched when I tried to kiss you at our wedding. You lock your door every night. You mapped every exit in this house within 48 hours. Yeah, I noticed. And you look at me like I'm about to hit you. He leaned forward. So let's try this again. What are you running from? Oilia's throat burned. She wanted to tell him, wanted to scream it, let someone else carry the weight for once. But fear had its claws in deep. Nothing? She whispered. Kale stared at her for a long moment. Then he stood, chair scraping against marble. When you're ready to stop lying, let me know. Until then, stay out of trouble. He walked out, leaving his coffee half finished, and Oilia sitting alone with her secrets. You're shite. A week passed. Then 2. Oilia fell into a routine. Wake up, avoid Kael, explore the grounds, have nightmares, repeat. The estate staff treated her like furniture. The guards ignored her. Mira stopped by occasionally with sarcastic commentary and champagne, but mostly Oilia was alone. It was better than being noticed. Then Lucien called. Oilia was in the library when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She should have ignored it, deleted it, but her hands moved on autopilot, swiping to answer. Hello, sweetheart. Ice flooded her veins. Lucien's voice, smooth, cultured, dripping poison. How did you... Her voice failed. Did you think marrying into the Virelli family would save you? Lucien laughed softly. I have friends there, Oilia. Close friends. I know everything. What you eat for breakfast, where you sleep, how you cry in your bathroom at night. Oilia's hand shook so hard she nearly dropped the phone. You haven't told him, have you? Lucien continued. About us. About what you are. Smart girl. Kyle Virelli doesn't have patience for damaged goods. He'll throw you away the second he realizes how broken you are. Stop, Oilia breathed. I'm just calling to remind you, our arrangement hasn't changed. You're mine, Oilia. You've always been mine. This marriage is temporary. When it falls apart, and it will, I'll be waiting. The line went dead. Oilia stood frozen in the library, phone clutched in white-knuckled hands, and felt her carefully constructed walls crumble. She didn't remember walking back to her room, didn't remember locking the door or sliding down to sit against it. Time blurred. Her breath came in sharp, painful gasps that wouldn't slow down. Lucien knew where she was, had people inside the estate, could reach her any time. There was no escape. There had never been an escape. A knock on the door jolted her. Oilia, Kael's voice, harder than usual. Open the door. She couldn't move. Oilia, now! Her hands fumbled with the lock. The door swung open and Kael was there, expression thunderous. Who called you? Oilia's mind blanked. What? Security flagged an unknown number. Incoming call to your phone, 20 minutes ago. Kael stepped into the room, eyes locked on her face. Who called you? She should lie, deflect, but exhaustion and fear had burned through her filters. Nobody, she whispered. Try again. It was nobody. Wrong number. Kael's expression went dangerously cold. You're shaking. Your pupils are dilated. You look like you're about to pass out. That wasn't a wrong number. He moved closer. Oilia backed up instinctively. Last chance, Oilia. Who called you? Her back hit the wall, trapped, just like always. I can't, she choked out. I can't tell you. Can't or won't? Both. Tears burned her eyes. She hated them, hated crying, hated being weak. You don't understand. If I tell you, he'll... She stopped. Too late. Kael's eyes sharpened. He'll what? He'll hurt you? Kill you? He was right in front of her now, close enough that she could see the cold fury in his expression. Who is he? Oilia shook her head, couldn't speak. Fine. Kael's voice dropped to something lethal. I'll find out myself, and when I do, whoever he is, whatever he's done, I'm going to make him regret ever touching you. He turned and walked toward the door. Wait! The word ripped out of her. Please, you can't. He has people here, in your organization. If you go after him, he'll know I talked. Kael stopped, looked back. Name. Oilia's entire body shook. This was it, the moment everything shattered. Lucien Dragor, she whispered. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Kael went absolutely still, the kind of stillness that preceded violence. Lucien Dragor, he repeated, voice like gravel. My father's business partner, sits on our advisory board. That Lucien Dragor. Oilia nodded, tears streaming now. How long? Since I was 16. Kael closed his eyes, inhaled slowly. When he opened them again, Oilia saw something that terrified her more than Lucien's threats. Absolute, controlled rage. He touched you. It wasn't a question. Yes. He hurt you. Yes. And your father knew. Oilia's throat locked. That answer hurt more than the rest. He didn't care. Kael crossed the room in 3 strides. Oilia flinched back, but he stopped just short of touching her, hands flexing at his sides like he was physically restraining himself. Listen to me very carefully, he said, voice low and lethal. You're under my protection now. That means anyone who touches you answers to me. I don't care who they are. I don't care what connections they have. Lucien Dragor just made the worst mistake of his life. You can't, Oilia gasped. He has allies, evidence. He'll destroy you. Let him try. Kael stepped back, expression shifting into something colder, calculating. I need you to tell me everything, every detail, every time, every threat. Can you do that? Oilia's mind reeled. Why? Because I'm going to dismantle him piece by piece, and I need ammunition. You'll start a war. There's already a war, Oilia. You've been fighting it alone. Kael's eyes burned into hers. Not anymore. Something in Oilia's chest cracked open. She'd been alone for so long she'd forgotten what it felt like when someone stood beside you. Okay, she breathed. Okay. Kael nodded once. Tomorrow. We start tomorrow. Get some sleep. He left, closing the door quietly behind him. Oilia sank onto her bed, heart racing, mind spinning. She'd just told Kael Varelli, the most dangerous man in Chicago, about Lucien. There was no taking it back, no undoing it. She'd just lit a fuse that would burn down everything. And for the first time in years, she felt something that wasn't fear. She felt hope. The next morning, Oilia woke to find Kael already waiting in her sitting room. He had coffee, black for him, cream and sugar for her, which meant he'd noticed how she took it, and a legal pad covered in notes. Start from the beginning, he said. So she did. It took hours. Oilia talked until her voice went hoarse, spilling every horrible detail. The first time Lucien cornered her at a family dinner. The threats. The escalation. The times he'd hurt her badly enough that she couldn't hide it. Her father's indifference. The years of silence. Kael didn't interrupt. Didn't react beyond the occasional tightening of his jaw or flex of his hands. He just listened and took notes in sharp, efficient handwriting. When she finally ran out of words, the sun had moved halfway across the sky. That's everything? Kael asked. Oilia nodded, exhausted, hollowed out. Okay. He set down his pen. Here's what happens next. I'm going to verify your story, not because I don't believe you, but because I need evidence that'll hold up. Then I'm going to build a case, find every other victim, every piece of leverage, every secret Lucien's been hiding, and when I have enough, I'm going to bury him. He'll see you coming, Oilia said quietly. He always does. Good. Kael's smile was razor sharp. I want him to. Oilia's breath caught. Why? Because predators like Lucien Dragor thrive in shadows. They operate on fear and silence. Kael leaned forward. I'm going to drag him into the light and watch him burn. It sounded insane. Impossible. Lucien had survived decades in Chicago's underworld by being smarter, faster, more ruthless than everyone else. But Kyle Varelli looked at her with absolute certainty, and for the first time, Oilia thought maybe, just maybe, this could work. "What do you need from me?" she asked. "Stay alive," Kyle said simply, "and trust me." Trust. The word felt foreign. Oilia had trusted her father once, trusted that adults would protect her, learned the hard way how wrong she'd been. But Kyle was asking anyway, offering something she hadn't had in years, an ally. "Okay," she whispered. "I trust you." Kael's expression shifted. Something almost soft flickered across his face before the mask slammed back into place. "Good," he said, "because this is about to get ugly." He wasn't exaggerating. Within 48 hours, Kael had mobilized his entire intelligence network. Private investigators, forensic accountants, lawyers who specialized in finding dirt. He moved like a general launching a campaign, precise and relentless. Oilia watched from the margins, stunned. She'd expected hesitation, doubt, maybe some token effort that would fizzle out. Instead, Kael attacked the problem like he attacked everything, with surgical efficiency and zero mercy. "Lucian's been careful," he told her 3 days in, spreading files across his office desk. "But nobody's that clean. I've found 4 women so far. Similar stories to yours, different details, same pattern." Oilia's stomach churned. 4? "That I've confirmed. There are probably more." Kael's jaw tightened. "He targets young women in vulnerable positions, uses their family's debts or connections as leverage. Makes sure they know he's untouchable." "He is untouchable," Oilia said bitterly. "He has half the city in his pocket." "Had," Kael looked up. "Past tense, because I'm dismantling those connections one by one." Over the next week, Oilia watched it happen. Kael called in favors, applied pressure, made offers people couldn't refuse. Slowly, methodically, he peeled away Lucian's protective layers, and Lucian noticed. The first warning came via Mira, who burst into the estate library looking furious. "What the hell is Kael doing?" Oilia looked up from her book. "What?" "Lucian Dragor just filed a formal complaint with the Virelli board. Claims Kael is conducting unauthorized investigations, overstepping his authority, destabilizing critical alliances." Mira threw herself into a chair. "The old guard is pissed. They're calling an emergency family meeting." Oilia's blood went cold. "When?" "Tomorrow night, full board." Mira's expression was grim. "And Lucian will be there." The meeting was held in the Virelli estate's formal dining room, a massive space with a table that could seat 30. Oilia wasn't supposed to attend. Wives didn't attend board meetings. She went anyway. Kael didn't stop her when she slipped in and took a seat along the wall. He just glanced her way once, expression unreadable, and turned back to the assembled board members. Lucian sat 3 seats down. He looked exactly as Oilia remembered: silver hair, expensive suit, pleasant smile that didn't reach his eyes. When he saw her, that smile widened. Oilia's hands clenched in her lap. She couldn't breathe right. "Let's get started," Kael's uncle, Marcus Virelli, current family head, said from the table's end. "Lucien, you called this meeting. What's the issue?" Lucien stood smoothly. "Thank you, Marcus. I hate to bring this to the board, but I'm concerned about some recent irregularities. Kael has been conducting investigations into my personal affairs, questioning my associates, interfering with long-standing business relationships. I'd like to understand why." All eyes turned to Kael. He leaned back in his chair, completely calm. "Simple. I'm investigating credible allegations of criminal activity." The room went silent. "Criminal activity?" Lucien's voice stayed pleasant, but his eyes went hard. "That's a serious accusation, Kael. I assume you have evidence?" "I do." "Then by all means, share it." Kael pulled out a folder, slid it across the table. 4 victims so far, all young women, all with connections to our organization or allied families, all with nearly identical stories about being sexually assaulted and threatened by you over a period of years. Lucien didn't even open the folder. "These are lies." I have medical records, witness statements, documentation of the hospital visits they tried to hide. Kael's voice stayed level. And I have testimony from my wife about her own experiences with you, starting when she was 16. Every head in the room swiveled toward Oilia. She felt their stares like physical blows, wanted to sink through the floor. But Kael had asked her to trust him, so she lifted her chin and met Lucien's eyes. His pleasant mask finally cracked. Just for a second, she saw the rage beneath. Oilia is mistaken, Lucien said smoothly. Confused. Perhaps projecting trauma from another source onto... I'm not confused. Oilia's voice came out stronger than expected. You raped me. Multiple times. You threatened to kill me if I told anyone. You said you had connections in the Varelli family who would make sure no one believed me. The room erupted. Marcus slammed his hand on the table. Enough! We can't! He looked at Lucien. Is any of this true? Of course not, Lucien said. I've known the Vance family for years. Oilia is clearly troubled. Perhaps her father's gambling debts. Don't, Kael cut in, voice like ice. Don't you dare try to discredit her. I've done my homework, Lucien. I know about the others. I know about the payoffs, the NDAs, the families you've silenced, and I'm going to make sure everyone else knows too. Lucien's expression went flat. You're making a mistake, Kael. No, you made the mistake when you touched my wife. The temperature plummeted. Marcus looked between them, face pale. We need time to investigate properly. Due process. Due process? Kael's laugh was harsh. Lucien's been operating with impunity for decades because men like you wanted due process instead of justice. I'm done with process. He's out. Effective immediately. You don't have the authority. I'm taking it. Kael stood. Anyone who wants to protect a rapist can walk out that door with him. Everyone else stays. Silence. Then slowly, board members started standing. Not to leave. To position themselves behind Kael. Not everyone. Maybe half. But enough. Lucien looked around the room, smile completely gone now. You're all making a terrible mistake. Get out, Kael said quietly. For a moment, Oilia thought Lucien might refuse, might lunge across the table, might pull out the gun she knew he always carried. Instead, he adjusted his cuffs, picked up his briefcase, and walked to the door, stopped beside Oilia's chair. This isn't over, he said, just loud enough for her to hear. Then he was gone. Oilia's entire body shook. The room buzzed with urgent conversations, board members arguing, phones coming out, chaos erupting. But through it all, Kael's eyes found hers. He'd done it. He'd actually stood up to Lucien in front of everyone. And now, Oilia realized with growing horror, there was no going back. Lucien would retaliate. He always did. The estate felt different after the board meeting. Colder. Like the walls themselves knew war had been declared. Oilia stood at her bedroom window watching the sunrise paint Chicago's skyline in shades of blood and gold. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Lucien's face, that moment when his mask cracked and she glimpsed the rage underneath. This isn't over. His words circled in her head like vultures. A knock rattled her door. Not the polite tap of the household staff. This was urgent, hard. It's me, Kael's voice. We need to talk. Oilia crossed the room and unlocked the door. Kael stood in the hallway still wearing yesterday's clothes, tie loosened, exhaustion carved into the lines around his eyes. He looked like he'd been awake as long as she had. What happened? She asked. 3 board members resigned overnight. 2 more are threatening to. Kael pushed past her into the room, started pacing. Marcus is furious, says I overstepped, that I should have brought the allegations to him privately instead of blowing up a meeting. You did the right thing. Did I? Kael stopped, looked at her. Because right now half the family thinks I'm starting a civil war over a woman I barely know, and the other half thinks you're lying to manipulate me. The words hit like a slap. Oilia's throat tightened. You think I'm lying? No. He said it fast, hard. But they do. And that's a problem because Lucien's already working the narrative. He's been calling allies all night, spinning this as a power play. Says I'm using false accusations to eliminate competition. People believe that? Enough of them. Kyle resumed pacing. He's been in this organization for 30 years. Built relationships, earned trust. I'm Marcus's nephew, who just inherited the empire. Who do you think they're going to side with? Oilia sank onto the edge of her bed. She'd known this would be bad. Hadn't understood how bad. What do we do? We prove it, beyond any doubt. Kale pulled out his phone, scrolled through something. I've got investigators tracking down the other victims, trying to get them to come forward. But Lucien paid most of them off with NDAs. They're scared. Of course they're scared. He destroys anyone who talks. Then we find evidence he can't deny. Financial records showing the payoffs, medical reports, anything concrete. Kale's jaw tightened. I need you to remember details, dates, locations, anything that can be verified. Oilia's hands clenched in her lap. I tried to forget. For years I tried to I know. Kale stopped pacing, crouched in front of her so they were eye level. I know this is hell, but I need you to go back there, just for a little while. Can you do that? She looked at his face, hard edges, cold eyes. But underneath she saw something that might have been desperation. He was fighting for her, burning bridges, starting wars. The least she could do was give him ammunition. Okay, she whispered. I'll try. They spent the next 3 hours in Kyle's office going through every painful memory Oilia could dredge up. Dates. Locations. What Lucien had said, how he'd threatened her, where he'd left marks that required hospital visits her father had dismissed as accidents. Kale's assistant, a sharp woman named Elena, who looked like she could kill someone with a stapler, took notes and cross-referenced everything against financial records, phone logs, security footage from various properties. This hotel, Elena said, pointing to one entry. The Ashford downtown. You said Lucien took you there in December 4 years ago? Oilia nodded, nausea rising at the memory. We might be able to pull security footage. Hotels keep that for 5 to 7 years. Elena made another note. And this hospital visit, broken ribs, you said? They weren't broken, just bruised. Oilia's voice came out flat, detached. It was easier that way. But the doctor wrote it up. My father paid cash so insurance wouldn't see it. Doctor's name? I don't, Oilia closed her eyes, reaching back. Morrison. Dr. James Morrison. He had an office in Lincoln Park. Elena's fingers flew across her keyboard. Got him. Still practicing. I'll send someone to request your medical records. They worked through lunch, then dinner. By the time Elena finally closed her laptop, Oilia felt scraped raw, like someone had taken sandpaper to her insides. That's good, Kyle said. That's enough for today. Oilia stood on shaking legs. Is it enough? To prove it? It's a start. Kyle walked her to the door. Get some rest. We'll pick this up tomorrow. But rest didn't come. Oilia lay in bed staring at the ceiling, reliving every moment she'd just recounted. Her skin crawled with phantom touches. Her ribs ached with remembered pain. Around 3 a.m., her phone buzzed. Unknown number again. Oilia's heart stopped. She should ignore it, delete it. Instead, her thumb moved on autopilot, opening the message. You made a mistake, sweetheart. Now everyone you care about will pay for it. A photo loaded below the text. Mira, walking to her car in a parking garage. The angle suggested it had been taken from close range. Recently. Oilia's hand shook so hard she nearly dropped the phone. Lucien wasn't just threatening her anymore. He was threatening the people around her. She should tell Kyle, should run down the hall right now and show him the message. But her body wouldn't move. Fear had her locked in place. Another message arrived. Tell Kyle to back off. Or she's first. Oilia stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then she deleted both messages, turned off her phone, and buried her face in her pillow to muffle the sound of her crying. Chakit. Morning came too fast. Oilia dragged herself downstairs to find the estate in chaos. Staff rushing around, security guards on high alert, voices raised behind closed doors. She caught Elena in the hallway. What's happening? Someone leaked the board meeting to the press, Elena said grimly. Allegations against Lucien Dragor are all over the news. His lawyers are already threatening lawsuits. Oilia's stomach dropped. Who leaked it? We don't know, but whoever did just escalated this into a public war. Elena's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, swore. I have to go. Stay inside. Don't talk to anyone. She disappeared down the hall, leaving Oilia standing alone in the chaos. The TV in the main sitting room was on, news anchors discussing the scandal in urgent tones. Oilia caught fragments: prominent businessman, serious allegations, Virelli family in turmoil. Her name wasn't mentioned, but it was only a matter of time. Turn it off. Oilia spun. Kyle stood in the doorway looking like he'd been through a war. His shirt was wrinkled, tie gone, hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. Did you leak it? She asked. No. He crossed to the TV and killed the power. But I know who did. Marcus. He's trying to force my hand. Thinks if this goes public, I'll have to back down to protect the family's reputation. Will you? Cale's laugh was bitter. That's what everyone keeps asking. My uncle, the board, our attorneys. They want me to issue a statement saying the allegations are under investigation, that we take them seriously, blah, blah, blah. Basically admit nothing, deny nothing. Let it blow over. And you said no. I said hell no. Kyle met her eyes. I'm not backing down, Oilia. Not now, not ever. Lucian Dragor is going to pay for what he did to you and every other woman he's hurt. The certainty in his voice should have been reassuring. Instead, it terrified her. Because Oilia knew what Kyle didn't. Lucienne was already moving, already threatening, and she couldn't tell Kyle about the messages without putting Mira in more danger. What if it's not enough? The question came out small. What if we can't prove it? Then we'll burn him anyway. Kyle's expression was stone. I've been doing this my whole life, Oilia. Fighting wars, eliminating threats. I know how to destroy someone. And Lucien just made himself my primary target. The next 48 hours blurred into a nightmare of phone calls, emergency meetings, and media circus. Reporters camped outside the estate gates. Kyle's lawyers filed motions. Lucien's lawyers filed counter motions. The entire city watched as the Virelli family imploded on live television. Through it all, Oilia moved like a ghost. She attended meetings when required, answered questions when asked, and tried not to think about the messages she'd deleted. About Mira, who kept showing up like nothing was wrong, who had no idea she was being watched. On the third day, one of the other victims came forward. Her name was Sarah Chen, 24 years old, daughter of a tech executive who'd done business with Lucian. She held a press conference with her own lawyer and told a story that mirrored Oilia's so closely it made Oilia sick. This is good, Elena said, watching the coverage in Kyle's office. Really good. One victim can be dismissed. Two starts to look like a pattern. We need more, Kyle said. He stood at the window, hands shoved in his pockets, radiating controlled fury. I've got investigators reaching out to the others, but they're not budging. Too scared. Can you blame them? Mira sprawled in one of the leather chairs, looking exhausted. Lucian's been untouchable for decades. They probably think coming forward will just get them killed. The word killed hung in the air. Oilia's chest tightened. She thought about the photo, the threat, or she's first. We need to offer protection, she heard herself say. If they're scared, guarantee their safety. Give them security, whatever they need. Kale turned from the window. That's actually not a bad idea. Elena, can we? Already on it. Elena was typing. I'll have protection details ready within the hour, but it wouldn't be enough. Oilia knew that. Lucien had survived this long by being smarter than everyone else. He wouldn't just sit back and let Kyle dismantle him. As if summoned by her thoughts, Kyle's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, frowned. I need to take this. He stepped into the hallway. Through the half-open door, Oilia heard his side of the conversation. What do you mean there's a problem? No, that's not... When? God damn it! He came back in looking like someone had punched him. What happened? Mira asked. Sarah Chen just recanted. Kale's voice was tight. Her lawyer issued a statement 20 minutes ago. Says she was mistaken, that the encounter with Lucien was consensual, that she regrets any confusion. The room went silent. He got to her, Oilia said quietly. Obviously, Kale slammed his phone on the desk hard enough to crack the screen. Question is how? She had protection. 2 guards outside her apartment 24/7. Money, Mira suggested. Or threats, or both. We had a deal. She was ready to testify. Kyle started pacing again, aggressive strides that ate up the office floor. Someone got to her. Someone convinced her to flip. Elena's laptop chimed. She opened something, read quickly, and went pale. We've got another problem. Of course we do. Dr. Morrison, the doctor who treated Oilia's injuries, his office burned down last night. Electrical fire, they're saying. But the timing... Elena looked up. All the medical records were kept on site. Paper files, they're gone. The oxygen left the room. Oilia felt the walls closing in. First Sarah. Now the medical records. Lucien was systematically eliminating every piece of evidence, and he was doing it faster than Kyle could build the case. This is bad, Mira said, stating the obvious. This is really bad. Kyle stopped pacing. His expression had gone dangerously calm, the kind of calm that preceded violence. Get me everything we have on Lucian's business operations. Every property, every shell company, every offshore account. I don't care if it's legal or not. I want leverage. Kyle, Elena said carefully, if you go after his business interests, that's war. I know. He looked at her. We're already at war, Elena. Time to start fighting like it, Mom. Over the next week, Kyle went scorched earth. He froze Lucien out of joint ventures, pulled Varelli investments from companies Lucien controlled, and started auditing every transaction that had Lucien's fingerprints on it. The financial pressure was immediate and brutal. Lucien retaliated. 2 Varelli warehouses caught fire in 3 days. A shipment of electronics went missing. 3 lower-level soldiers switched sides, taking territory and contacts with them. And through it all, the media circus intensified, talking heads debating whether the allegations were real or a Varelli family power play. Oilia watched it unfold from the margins, anxiety eating her alive. She wanted to help but didn't know how. Wanted to tell Kyle about the threats but couldn't without endangering Mira. She felt useless, trapped. The nightmares got worse. She'd wake up gasping, Lucian's hands around her throat in her dreams, and have to remind herself she was safe, that Kyle's guards were outside her door, that Lucien couldn't reach her here, except he could. He was reaching everyone, systematically dismantling Kyle's case while Kyle tried to dismantle his empire. You look like hell, Mira said one afternoon, finding Oilia in the library. Thanks. I'm serious, Mira dropped into the chair across from her. When's the last time you ate? Slept? I don't know. Yesterday? Oilia rubbed her eyes. It's all blurring together. This isn't sustainable. Mira leaned forward. You need to take care of yourself. Kyle's handling the Lucien situation. Is he? The words came out sharper than intended. Because from where I'm sitting, Lucien's winning. He's destroyed the evidence, flipped witnesses, and started a war. Meanwhile, we're hemorrhaging allies and territory. Mira's expression tightened. Kyle knows what he's doing. Does he? Or is he so focused on revenge that he can't see he's walking into a trap? That's not fair. Isn't it? Oilia stood, agitation driving her to her feet. I told him to let it go, to protect himself, but he went to war anyway, and now people are getting hurt. The warehouses, the soldiers, those are real casualties, Mira. Real people paying the price for his crusade. His crusade? Mira's voice went hard. You mean the crusade to get justice for what Lucien did to you? Or do you not want that anymore? I want it to stop. The words exploded out. I want Lucien gone. I want to feel safe. I want to stop having nightmares every single night. But I don't want Kyle to destroy everything he's built for me. I'm not worth that. That's not your call to make. It should be. It's my trauma, my past, my... Oilia's voice cracked. This was supposed to be a business arrangement, a merger. He wasn't supposed to care. Mira stood slowly. But he does. Whether you want him to or not, he cares. And that scares you more than Lucien ever did. The accusation landed like a physical blow. Oilia stared at Mira, chest heaving, unable to form a response. I'm right, aren't I? Mira's voice softened. You're terrified that someone actually gives a damn about what happens to you. Because if Kyle cares, that means you matter. And if you matter, you have to start believing you're worth fighting for. I don't... Oilia's throat closed. I can't.
Then figure it out, fast. Mira headed for the door, paused. Because Kael's betting everything on you, Oilia. The least you can do is decide if you're in or out. She left. Oilia stood alone in the library, Mira's words echoing in her head, and felt something crack open inside her chest.
That night, Oilia made a decision. She found Kael in his office at midnight, surrounded by files and empty coffee cups. He looked up when she entered, surprise flickering across his exhausted face. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "No." Oilia closed the door behind her. "We need to talk. If this is about the warehouses, it's about Lucien. He's been sending me messages." Kael went completely still.
What? Threats, photos of Mira, telling me to make you back off or he'll hurt her. Oilia's hands shook, but she forced herself to keep talking. I deleted them. I know I should have told you, but I was scared and I thought if I just kept quiet, show me your phone. I deleted show me. Oilia pulled out her phone with trembling hands. Kael took it, fingers flying across the screen. His expression darkened with each second.
"These are recoverable," he said quietly, dangerously. "Even deleted, I can pull them from your cloud backup. How long has this been going on?" "Since the board meeting." 10 days. Kael's voice had gone flat. "He's been threatening you for 10 days and you said nothing." "I was trying to protect Mira." "By lying to me?" He stood abruptly, chair scraping. "By keeping intel that could help us track him? Jesus, Oilia, what were you thinking?"
"I was thinking he'd kill her." The words ripped out. "He sent a photo of her in a parking garage. He's watching her, Kael. And if I told you, if you increased security or confronted him, he'd know I talked. And what? He'd follow through?" Kael rounded the desk. "He's already following through. The fires, the missing shipments, that's him showing us what he's capable of. He doesn't need an excuse." Oilia's eyes burned. "I'm sorry."
"Sorry doesn't help me protect you. Or Mira, or anyone else in the crossfire." Kael pulled out his own phone, started typing. "I'm putting security on Mira tonight, double team, and you don't delete anything else. Understood?" "Understood." "Good." He kept typing, movements sharp with anger. "Anything else you've been hiding?" The question hung between them. Oilia thought about all the things she hadn't said, the fear that woke her up every night, the guilt that ate at her watching Kael burn bridges for her sake, the growing terrifying realization that Mira was right. She was falling for him, and it scared her more than Lucien ever had. "No," she lied. "Nothing else." Kael's eyes cut to her face. For a moment she thought he'd call her on it. Instead he just shook his head. "Get out," he said quietly. "I've got work to do." Oilia fled. The next morning brought fresh hell. Oilia woke to shouting downstairs. She threw on clothes and rushed down to find Kael in the foyer surrounded by security, Elena on her phone looking frantic, and Mira. Mira was there, alive, unhurt. Relief flooded through Oilia. "What happened?" she asked. "Lucien made a move," Kael said grimly. "Tried to grab Mira from her apartment this morning. 2 men, professional. But we had security on her like I promised. They intercepted." Oilia's blood ran cold. "Is she—" "I'm fine," Mira snapped. "Pissed, but fine. They didn't get close enough to touch me." "The men?" Kael asked one of the guards. "In custody. Not talking yet, but we're working on it." Kael's jaw tightened. "Make them talk. I don't care how." The guard nodded and left. Kael turned to Mira. "You're staying here, non-negotiable." "I have a life, Kael." Not anymore. Not until this is over." His voice left no room for argument. "You want to be mad at someone. Be mad at Lucien. He's the one who put you in danger." Mira's eyes cut to Oilia. The accusation there was clear. "You put me in danger. By being here. By existing." Oilia wanted to defend herself, to explain. Instead, she just stood there taking it because Mira was right. This was her fault. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Yeah," Mira said coldly. "Everyone's sorry." She stalked off toward the guest wing. Kael watched her go, then looked at Oilia. "Don't," he said before she could speak. "Don't apologize again. This isn't your fault." "Isn't it? If I hadn't told you about Lucien..." Then he'd still be out there hurting people, and you'd still be suffering in silence. Kael's expression softened fractionally. I know this is hard, but we're doing the right thing. Are we? Because it feels like we're just making everything worse. Kael opened his mouth to respond, but his phone rang. He glanced at it, frowned. I have to take this. He walked away, leaving Oilia standing alone in the foyer, wondering how everything had spiraled so far out of control. The answer came 3 hours later. Kael called an emergency meeting. Oilia, Mira, Elena, Marcus, and a handful of senior board members. They gathered in the main conference room, tension thick enough to choke on. We got one of Lucien's men to talk, Kael said without preamble. Turns out the attempt on Mira wasn't spontaneous. Lucien's planning something bigger. A coordinated strike against multiple Varelli assets simultaneously. Warehouses, transit routes, key personnel. When? Marcus demanded. We don't know. Soon. Kael pulled up a map on the screen. But we know the targets, and we know he's hired outside contractors, mercenaries who don't care about Chicago politics. He's escalating. The room erupted in argument. Marcus wanted to negotiate. Half the board wanted to hit Lucien first, preemptive strike. The other half wanted to cut losses and let Lucien walk. Through it all, Kael stood silent at the head of the table, watching, calculating. Enough, he said finally. The room went quiet. We're not negotiating. We're not backing down. And we're not letting Lucien dictate terms. He wants a war? We'll give him one. But we do it smart. How? Someone asked. We draw him out. Make him commit to a target. Then we're waiting for him. That's insane, Marcus said. You're talking about using our own people as bait. I'm talking about ending this before he kills someone. Kael's eyes were ice. Lucien thinks he's in control, that he can terrorize us into submission. We prove him wrong. And if the plan fails, Marcus challenged, if people die, then they die knowing they were fighting for something that mattered. Kael's voice was steel. I'm done playing defense. Tomorrow we go on offense. Anyone who's not on board can leave now. No one moved. Good, Kael said. Elena, coordinate with security. I want eyes on every possible target. Triple the guards. And get me a full workup on the mercenaries Lucien hired. I want to know who we're dealing with. The meeting dissolved into frantic planning. Oilia sat frozen in her chair, watching it all unfold, and realized with creeping horror that this had stopped being about justice somewhere along the way. This was about survival, and someone wasn't going to make it out alive. That night, Oilia couldn't stay in her room. The walls felt too close, the silence too loud. She wandered the estate halls, restless and anxious, until she found herself outside Kael's office. The door was cracked open. Through it, she saw him sitting at his desk, head in his hands, looking more exhausted than she'd ever seen him. She knocked softly. Kael looked up. It's late. Couldn't sleep. Oilia hesitated in the doorway. Can I come in? He gestured to the chairs. She sat, hands folded in her lap. I'm scared, she admitted quietly. You should be. Kael leaned back. This is going to get worse before it gets better. Is it worth it? The question hung between them. All this, the war, the casualties, the risk, is it worth it just to take down one man? Kael was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was raw. When I was 17, my father put a gun in my hand and told me to execute a man who'd betrayed us. Said it was my initiation, proof I was loyal. He stared at something Oilia couldn't see. I did it. Pulled the trigger without hesitation, and I've been making those kinds of choices ever since. Life or death, justice or expediency. Who lives and who dies. He looked at her. But this? Going after Lucien? This is the first time in 15 years I've fought for something that actually matters. Not territory, not money, not power. Justice. For you. For every woman he's hurt. That's worth the cost. Oilia's chest tightened. Even if it destroys you? Even then? She wanted to argue, to tell him he was being stupid, reckless, that one broken girl wasn't worth sacrificing everything for. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, she stood, crossed to his desk, and did something that would have been impossible 3 weeks ago. She reached out and took his hand. Kael looked down at their joined hands, surprise flickering across his face. Then his fingers tightened around hers. "I'm sorry," Oilia whispered, "for all of this, for dragging you into my mess." "You didn't drag me anywhere. I chose this." Kael's thumb brushed across her knuckles. "And I'd choose it again." Something shifted between them. The air changed. Oilia felt it, that pull, that dangerous warmth that had been building for weeks. She should pull away, should run before this became something neither of them could take back. Instead, she leaned closer. Kael's free hand came up to cup her face, thumb tracing the fading bruise on her jaw with infinite gentleness. "Tell me to stop." "I can't." He kissed her, soft at first, testing, then deeper when she didn't pull away. Oilia's hands fisted in his shirt, holding on like he was the only solid thing in a world that wouldn't stop spinning. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kael rested his forehead against hers. "This complicates things," he said roughly. "I know." "We should probably stop." "Probably." Neither of them moved. The moment stretched, fragile and perfect and doomed. Then Kael's phone shattered it, ringing with an urgent tone that made him swear and pull away. "What?" he snapped into the receiver. His expression went from annoyed to alarmed in seconds. "When? How many?" "God damn it, I'm on my way." He hung up, already moving. "Lucien just hit 3 warehouses simultaneously, full assault teams, professional grade." Oilia's stomach dropped. "How bad?" "Bad. We've got casualties." Kael grabbed his jacket, checked the gun holstered under his arm. "Stay here. Lock the doors. Don't let anyone in except Elena or me." Kael, "I mean it, Oilia. This is what we expected, but it's happening faster than planned. Until we know the full scope." His phone rang again. He answered it while pulling on his jacket. "Talk to me." Whatever the voice on the other end said made him go pale. "Are you sure? How long ago?" "Jesus. Okay, I'm coming." He looked at Oilia, and she saw something in his eyes that turned her blood to ice. "What?" she demanded. "They found Marcus in his car outside one of the warehouses." Kael's voice was hollow. "Single gunshot to the head. Professional hit." The world tilted. Marcus was dead. The head of the Varelli family. Kael's uncle, murdered. "Lucien," Oilia breathed. "Yeah." Kael's expression had gone absolutely cold, remote. "He's declaring war for real this time. No more half measures." He headed for the door, stopped, looked back at her. "Lock the doors," he repeated. "And Oilia, if something happens to me, don't. If something happens, Elena has instructions. She'll get you out. New identity, new city, enough money to start over." "Kael, no. Promise me you'll go." Oilia's throat locked up. She couldn't promise that, couldn't imagine running while he stayed to fight. "Promise me," he demanded. "I promise," she lied. Kael nodded once and left. Oilia stood alone in his office, heart hammering, and knew with absolute certainty that everything was about to fall apart. The war had started, and there was no going back. Oilia locked the office door like Kael had told her. Then she unlocked it. Locked it again. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Marcus was dead, shot in his own car like an animal, and Kael had walked out into a war zone with nothing but a gun and rage. She paced the office, mind racing. Lucien had escalated past threats into open murder. The careful dance they'd been doing, evidence gathering, legal maneuvering, political pressure, was over. This was raw violence now. Kill or be killed. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Oilia's heart stopped. She stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the decline button. But something made her answer. "Hello, sweetheart?" Lucien's voice poured through the speaker like poison, smooth, calm, pleased with himself. "I told you to make him stop," Lucien continued. "You didn't listen. So now Marcus Varelli is dead. And this is just the beginning." Oilia's grip tightened on the phone. "You're a monster." "I'm a businessman protecting my interests." Kael declared war. I'm simply responding in kind. A pause. How many more people need to die before you accept reality, Oilia? You can't win this. Neither can he. We'll see. Lucienne laughed softly.
Still defiant. I always liked that about you. Even when you were sobbing beneath me, there was fight in your eyes. His voice turned cold. But that fight is going to get everyone you care about killed. Kael, Mira, Elena, all those guards protecting you. Their blood will be on your hands. No. Oilia's voice cracked. You're the one killing them. I'm giving you a choice. End this. Convince Kael to back down, issue a public retraction, admit you lied about the allegations. Do that, and I'll call off the attacks. Everyone lives. And if I refuse, then I keep killing Virelis until there's no one left, including your husband. Lucienne's tone turned almost gentle. Think about it, sweetheart. You have 24 hours to decide. Make the right choice. The line went dead. Oilia stood frozen, phone pressed to her ear, listening to empty air. Lucian had just given her an ultimatum. Sacrifice the truth and save lives, or hold on to justice and watch everyone die. 24 hours. She sank into Kael's chair, mind spinning. Part of her, the part that had survived years of abuse by learning to bend, to submit, to do whatever it took to make it stop, screamed at her to accept, to call Kael right now and tell him to stand down, save the lives that could still be saved. But the other part, the part that had found her voice at that board meeting, that had trusted Kael enough to share her truth, rebelled at the thought. She'd spent years silencing herself for Lucien, letting him win because fighting seemed impossible. Not anymore. Her phone rang again. Elena this time. Where are you? Elena's voice was sharp with stress. Kael's office. He told me to lock the doors. Good. Stay there. We're in full lockdown. I've got teams sweeping the estate for breaches. Voices shouted in the background. How are you holding up? I'm fine, Oilia lied. Have you heard from Kael? 20 minutes ago. He's coordinating response teams at the warehouses. We've got 4 dead so far, 6 wounded. It's bad, Oilia. 4 dead. 4 people who'd been alive this morning, who'd had families, lives, futures, gone because of a war that started when she told the truth. Elena? Oilia's voice came out small. What if we're wrong? What if Kael should back down? Silence on the other end. Then Elena said carefully, Are you having second thoughts? I'm having all the thoughts. Oilia pressed her free hand against her eyes. People are dying. For what? To punish one man? Is that worth it? You tell me, is justice worth fighting for? The question cut deep. Oilia thought about Sarah Chen, who'd come forward and then recanted under pressure. Thought about the other women Kael had found, the ones too terrified to speak. Thought about the girl she'd been at 16 when Lucien first cornered her, and she'd had nowhere to turn. I don't know anymore, she whispered. Then figure it out, Elena said bluntly, because Kael's betting everything on you being worth this fight. Don't make him wrong. She hung up before Oilia could respond. Oilia sat in the silence of Kael's office, surrounded by files documenting Lucian's crimes, and tried to remember why she'd thought telling the truth was a good idea. Nank. Kael came back 3 hours later. Oilia heard him before she saw him, heavy footsteps in the hallway, voices conferring, doors slamming. She stood from where she'd been curled in his desk chair and met him in the doorway. He looked like he'd walked through hell. Blood spattered his shirt. Not his, she hoped. His face was streaked with soot, and exhaustion carved lines around his mouth she hadn't seen before. You're alive, she breathed. Yeah. Kael pushed past her into the office, went straight to the liquor cabinet, poured 3 fingers of whiskey and downed it in one swallow. For now. How bad? 6 dead, 9 wounded, 3 warehouses completely destroyed. He poured another drink. And Lucien's people disappeared like smoke. Professional extraction. We didn't catch a single one. Oilia's stomach churned. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't bring them back. Kael's voice was flat, empty. Sorry doesn't unfuck this situation. I know. He turned to look at her then. Really look. And what she saw in his eyes made her want to run. Rage barely contained, grief he wouldn't acknowledge. And underneath it all, a desperate kind of determination that scared her more than Lucien's threats. "Lucien called me," she said quietly. Kael went very still. "When?"
Right after you left. He gave me an ultimatum. 24 hours to convince you to back down and publicly recant the allegations. If I do that, he stops the attacks. And if you don't, he keeps killing people until there's no one left." Kael set down his glass with deliberate care. "What did you tell him?"
"Nothing." He hung up before I could respond. Oilia wrapped her arms around herself. "But Kael, maybe we should consider—" "No. You haven't even heard— I don't need to hear it." Kael's voice turned to ice. "We're not backing down. We're not recanting.
And we're sure as hell not negotiating with a man who just murdered 6 people.
More will die," Oilia said desperately.
He won't stop. He'll keep escalating until... Until what? Until everyone's too scared to fight back? That's how men like Lucien win, Oilia. They make the cost of resistance so high that people give up."
Kael crossed to her, eyes blazing.
"I won't give up. Not on this. Not on you.
Even if it kills you?"
Even then."
The certainty in his voice broke something inside her.
Oilia felt tears burn her eyes and couldn't stop them.
"I can't watch you die for me." "Then look away." Kael's expression softened fractionally. "But don't ask me to stop, because I won't." He pulled her into his arms. Oilia collapsed against his chest, breathing in gunpowder and smoke and the underneath scent that was just him. She wanted to stay here, wanted to pretend the world outside this room didn't exist. But it did, and it was burning. "What do we do now?" she asked against his shirt.
"We hit back. Harder." Kael's arms tightened around her. "Lucien thinks he's won, that we'll fold under pressure. We prove him wrong." The family meeting the next morning was chaos. What remained of the Varelli board gathered in the main conference room, 12 people who'd been 24 hours ago before half of them fled or switched sides. Kael presided from the head of the table, Marcus's empty chair, a silent accusation.
"We're at a crossroads," Kael said without preamble.
"Lucien Dragor has declared open war. He's killed 6 of our people, destroyed 3 facilities, and murdered the head of this family. We can either capitulate or we can fight back." "I'm choosing fight." "With what army?" one of the older board members, Antonio, demanded. "We've lost 1/3 of our soldiers in the last week. Another 1/3 are too scared to show up, and the rest are scattered across the city trying to protect assets we can't defend. Then we consolidate, pull back to defensible positions, protect what matters, and let the rest burn."
"Let it burn?"
Antonio's face reddened. "Those warehouses represent millions in inventory." "Which means nothing if we're all dead." Kael's voice cut through the argument. "Lucien's playing a war of attrition, trying to bleed us dry. We don't play his game, we change the rules." "How?" another board member asked. Kael pulled up a file on the screen. "Lucien's using mercenaries, outside contractors who don't care about Chicago politics. That's his advantage. They're loyal to money, not territory. But it's also his weakness."
"I don't follow," Mira said from her seat against the wall. "Money can be traced, transfers, payments, contracts."
Kael's smile was sharp. "I've got forensic accountants tearing through Lucien's finances as we speak. When we find the paper trail connecting him to last night's attacks, we hand it to the FBI." The room went silent. "You want to bring in the feds?" Antonio's voice was incredulous. "That violates every code we—" "The code went out the window when Lucien started murdering us," Kael snapped. "This isn't about honor anymore, it's about survival. And if bringing down Lucien means federal prison instead of a bullet, I'll take it." Oilia watched from the doorway, heart pounding. Kael was changing tactics, going legitimate. It was smart. Lucien could dodge the criminal underworld, but federal charges were different, harder to escape. If they could prove the connection. "This is a mistake," Antonio said, standing. "You're inviting federal scrutiny into all of our operations. They won't stop at Lucien. They'll investigate everything."
"Let them." Kael met his eyes. "We go clean, starting now. Every operation, every transaction. If it can't survive daylight, we shut it down." Antonio stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "You're destroying everything your family built."
"My family built this empire on blood and fear." Maybe it's time to try something different. Kael's expression was stone. Anyone who doesn't like it can walk, but walk fast, because Lucien's not done killing yet. 3 people stood and left. The rest stayed, looking shell-shocked. Good, Kael said. Elena, coordinate with the accountants. I want that paper trail by end of day. Mira, work with security on consolidating our defensive positions. Everyone else, inventory what assets we can protect and abandon the rest. The meeting dissolved into frantic activity. Oilia slipped away before anyone noticed her, mind reeling. Kael was dismantling the Virelli Empire to get to Lucien, burning it down from the inside. She wasn't sure if it was brilliant or insane, but the breakthrough came 16 hours later. Oilia was in the library trying to distract herself with a book when Elena burst in, laptop under her arm, expression fierce with triumph. We found it, she said breathlessly. The money trail. Lucien's been using a shell company in the Caymans to funnel payments to the mercenary group. 6 figures transferred 3 days before the attacks. We've got bank records, wire transfer confirmations, everything. Oilia's heart leaped. That's enough for the FBI? It's enough to start an investigation, which means Lucien's about to have federal agents crawling up his ass. Elena's smile was sharp. Kael's meeting with his contact at the bureau in 2 hours. This is it, Oilia. We're about to bury him. It felt too easy, too clean. After weeks of watching Lucien dodge every attempt to pin him down, the idea that a paper trail would be his undoing seemed almost anticlimactic. Where's Kael now? Oilia asked. Upstairs, getting ready for the meeting. Elena headed for the door, paused. You should talk to him. He's been running on fumes and rage for 3 days. Someone needs to make him eat something before he collapses. She left. Oilia sat alone in the library, book forgotten, and tried to let herself feel hope. They'd found evidence. Real concrete proof that Lucien had orchestrated the attacks. The FBI would investigate. Lucien would go to prison. It would be over. So why did her stomach feel like lead? She went upstairs and found Kael in his bedroom, standing at the window in a fresh shirt and slacks, staring out at the estate grounds. He looked better, showered, shaved, almost human again, but the exhaustion in the lines of his face remained. Elena told me, Oilia said from the doorway, about the evidence. Yeah. Kael didn't turn around. It's good, solid, should be enough to get federal prosecutors interested. But nothing. This is what we wanted. He finally looked at her. Why don't you look happier? Oilia stepped into the room. Because it feels too easy. Lucien survived for decades by being smarter than everyone else. You really think he'd leave a paper trail this obvious? People make mistakes. Get sloppy. Maybe he thought he was untouchable. But Kael's expression suggested he was having the same doubts. Or maybe it's bait, Oilia said quietly. A trap to draw you out. Could be. Kael crossed to his dresser, picked up his gun, checked the clip with practiced efficiency. I'm bringing backup. Elena's coordinating security for the meeting. We'll be careful. Don't go. The words burst out before Oilia could stop them. Kael looked up, surprise flickering across his face. I have to, he said gently. This is our best shot at ending this. It's too convenient, too perfect. Oilia moved closer, urgency driving her forward. Lucien doesn't make mistakes, and he doesn't leave evidence lying around. If your accountants found this, it's because he wanted them to. Then what's the play? He leads me into a federal building and tries to kill me in front of FBI agents? I don't know, but something's wrong. I can feel it. Kael studied her for a long moment. Then he set down the gun and cupped her face in his hands. I trust your instincts. If you think it's a trap, we'll be ready for one. That's not good enough. It's all we've got. He leaned in, pressed a kiss to her forehead. Stay here, lock the doors. I'll be back in 3 hours. Kael, 3 hours, Oilia. Then this is over. He grabbed his jacket and gun and walked out, leaving her standing alone in his bedroom with dread coiling in her gut. 2 hours and 43 minutes later, all hell broke loose. Oilia was pacing her room, checking her phone every 30 seconds, when the first explosion rocked the estate. The windows rattled. Somewhere outside, alarms started screaming. She ran to the window and looked down. The south gate was engulfed in flames. Dark figures in tactical gear poured through the breach, weapons raised. At least 20 of them, maybe more. Oilia's blood turned to ice. It was a trap, but not the trap Kael had expected. Lucien hadn't waited for Kael to reach the FBI. He'd sent the mercenaries here. Now, while Kael was gone and the estate's defenses were spread thin, her door slammed open. Mira stood there, gun in hand, face pale. "We need to move. Now." "What's happening?" Lucien's men breached the perimeter. They're sweeping the house. Mira grabbed Oilia's arm. "Elena's got a safe room in the basement. Come on!" They ran. Down the hallway, past windows that showed muzzle flashes and guards falling, toward the back stairs. Behind them, Oilia heard boots on marble, shouting, gunfire echoing through the estate. They made it to the basement level before the shooting started in their direction. Mira shoved Oilia behind a concrete pillar and returned fire, her pistol barking in the enclosed space. The mercenaries scattered, taking cover. "Go!" Mira shouted. "Safe room's through that door. Keypad code is 2749. "What about you?" "I'll hold them off. Go!" Oilia ran. Her hands shook so badly it took 3 tries to punch in the code. The heavy steel door swung open, revealing a small reinforced room with surveillance monitors and supplies. She turned back. "Mira, come on!" Mira fired twice more, then sprinted for the door. She was 3 steps away when the bullet caught her. The impact spun her around. She dropped, hard, blood blooming across her shoulder. Oilia screamed and lunged forward, but Mira held up a hand. "Close the door," she gasped. "No, close it. They can't get in if—" She coughed, blood on her lips. "Go, lock it, call Kael." The mercenaries were advancing. Oilia saw their shadows on the walls, heard their boots getting closer. She had seconds to decide. She grabbed Mira's arm and hauled her backward with strength born of pure terror. Mira screamed, but Oilia didn't stop, dragging her across the threshold. The second they were both inside, Oilia slammed the door. Heavy locks engaged with mechanical clicks. Bullets pinged off the other side. The sound was deafening in the small space. Oilia dropped beside Mira, hands hovering over the wound. So much blood. Too much. "Stay with me. Stay with me." Mira's eyes were unfocused. "Called you useless?" "You did, multiple times, but you can apologize later." Oilia found a first aid kit on the wall, tore it open. Her hands remembered the basics from years of hiding her own injuries. Pressure, elevation, stop the bleeding. She worked frantically while Mira's breath came in shallow gasps. The surveillance monitors showed chaos, mercenaries sweeping through the house, guards fighting back, fires spreading. It was a massacre. And Kael wasn't here. Oilia's phone buzzed in her pocket. She fumbled for it, smearing blood across the screen. Kael's name flashed. "Thank God," she gasped, answering. "Kael, we're under attack. The estate—" "I know." His voice was tight with barely controlled rage. "I'm 20 minutes out. How bad?" "Bad. They breached the south gate. At least 20 hostiles. Mira's been shot. We're in the safe room, but—" An explosion cut her off. The building shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. "Oilia!" Kael's voice turned sharp with fear. "Talk to me." "I'm okay. We're okay. But they're tearing the place apart." Oilia looked at the monitors, saw mercenaries planting something on the main support columns. "Kael, I think they're rigging explosives. They're going to bring down the building." Kael swore viciously. "Listen to me very carefully. That safe room has an emergency exit. Northwest corner, behind the supply shelf. It leads to a tunnel that comes out near the garage. Can you move, Mira?" Oilia looked at Mira, who'd gone pale and shocky. "I don't know." "You have to try. Because if they blow the building with you inside, I understand." Oilia's voice cracked. "Kael, this is my fault. If I'd never told you about Lucien—" "Don't!" The word was fierce. "This is on Lucien. All of it. You survive, you hear me? I'm coming for you." The line cut to static, then dead air. Oilia stared at the phone, then at Mira bleeding on the floor, then at the monitors showing her world burning down. She'd wanted justice. Wanted to stop Lucien from hurting anyone else. Instead, she'd started a war that was going to kill everyone she cared about. Mira, she touched her shoulder gently. Can you walk? Can I… What? Walk, stand, move. We need to get out of here. Mira's laugh was wet, pained. You're insane. Probably, but we're doing it anyway. Oilia hauled Mira to her feet, slinging her good arm around her shoulders. Come on. Kael said there's a tunnel. They stumbled to the northwest corner. Oilia shoved aside the supply shelf with strength she didn't know she had. Behind it was a steel panel with a release lever. She pulled it, and the panel swung open, revealing a dark tunnel. On the monitors behind them, the mercenaries started their countdown. 30 seconds, a mechanical voice intoned. Move, Oilia gasped. They plunged into the tunnel. It was narrow, dark, sloping upward. Mira's weight dragged at Oilia with every step, but she didn't stop, couldn't stop. Behind them, she heard the muffled thump of the first explosion. The tunnel shook. Dust choked the air. Oilia kept running, half-dragging Mira, until she saw light ahead. The exit. They burst out into the garage just as the main building went up in a fireball that lit the night sky orange. Oilia and Mira collapsed on the concrete, coughing and bleeding and alive. Around them, the Virelli estate burned. The war had just claimed its biggest casualty yet. Kael arrived to find his family's home reduced to rubble and flames. He'd barely thrown the car into park before he was out, running toward the wreckage, shouting Oilia's name. Here! He spun, found them in the garage. Oilia covered in dust and blood that wasn't hers, Mira barely conscious. Relief hit him so hard his knees almost buckled. You're alive! He dropped beside them, hands running over Oilia, checking for injuries. Jesus Christ, you're alive!
Mira needs a hospital, Oilia said. Her voice sounded distant, shocked. She's been shot. Already called it in. Ambulance is 2 minutes out. Kael looked at the burning estate, jaw clenched so hard Oilia could hear his teeth grinding. How many got out? I don't know. We were in the safe room. I saw guards fighting on the monitors, but… Her voice broke. I don't know. Sirens wailed in the distance. Police. Fire trucks. Ambulances. The civilian world responding to carnage that had spilled out of the shadows. This is it, Kael said quietly. The point of no return. Lucien just made this personal in a way that can't be walked back. It was already personal. No. Before was business, territory. This? He gestured at the ruins. This was a message. He's not just trying to win anymore. He's trying to annihilate us. The ambulance screamed up the drive. Paramedics rushed out, went straight to Mira. Oilia watched them work with numb detachment. We should go with her, she said. You should. I can't. Kael stood, already pulling out his phone. I need to coordinate response, find out who else made it, regroup what's left of our forces. Kael. He cupped her face, thumb brushing away soot and tears. Go to the hospital. Stay with Mira. I'll meet you there as soon as I can. What are you going to do? His smile was cold enough to freeze blood. What I should have done from the beginning. Hunt Lucien Draeger down and end this. He kissed her hard and fast, then walked away into the chaos. Oilia climbed into the ambulance beside Mira, watched through the back windows as Kael became a silhouette against the flames, and knew with sick certainty that one way or another, this was ending tonight. The hospital was chaos. The Virelli estate attack had generated casualties beyond just Mira. Guards, staff, people who'd been in the wrong place when the mercenaries struck. Oilia sat in a waiting room while surgeons worked on Mira and tried not to think about the body count. Elena found her 3 hours later. She's stable, Elena said without preamble. Bullet missed the major arteries. She'll recover. Thank God. Oilia's voice was hollow. What about the others? 14 dead, 21 wounded, 8 missing. Elena sat heavily in the chair beside her. It's the worst single loss in Virelli history. 14 dead. 14 people who'd been breathing this morning, gone because Lucien wanted to prove a point. Where's Kael? Oilia asked. Hunting. Elena's expression was grim. He's got every available resource tracking Lucien's location. When he finds him, she didn't finish, didn't need to. This has to stop, Oilia whispered.
It will. Tonight. Elena looked at her. One of them dies, probably both. That's how these things end. The words settled like stones in Oilia's chest. She'd known it intellectually, but hearing it stated plainly made it real. Kael was going to kill Lucien, or Lucien was going to kill Kael. Either way, blood was the only possible resolution now. I need to see him, Oilia said, standing. Bad idea. Let Kael handle. I need to see him, she repeated, harder. Where is he? Elena sighed, pulled out her phone, typed something. He's at a secondary safe house on the west side, but Oilia, if you go there, then I go there. She headed for the exit. Call me a car. This is a mistake. Maybe, probably, but Oilia was done sitting on the sidelines while men destroyed each other over her trauma. If this was ending tonight, she was going to face it head on. The safe house was a nondescript brownstone in a neighborhood that had seen better decades. Oilia paid the driver and approached the front door. It opened before she could knock. A guard she didn't recognize blocked the entrance. Mrs. Varelli, Mr. Varelli said, I don't care what he said. Let me in. The guard looked uncomfortable, but stepped aside. Inside, the safe house was all business. Maps on the walls, laptops open, phones ringing, half a dozen people coordinating the hunt for Lucien Dragor, and at the center of it all, Kael. He looked up when she entered. Surprise flickered across his face, then anger. You're supposed to be at the hospital. Mira's stable. I came here. Why? Because you're about to do something you can't take back, and I need to... She stopped. Didn't know how to finish that sentence. Kael crossed to her, took her elbow, steered her into a side room away from the others, closed the door. You can't be here, he said flatly. It's not safe. Nowhere's safe. Your house just exploded. Oilia met his eyes. What's the plan, Kael? Find Lucien and kill him? Yes. No hesitation, no justification, just cold certainty. And then what? Oilia demanded. His allies retaliate? This war keeps escalating until everyone's dead?
Then everyone's dead. Kael's voice was ice. But Lucien dies first. That's non-negotiable. Even if it destroys you? I'm already destroyed, Oilia. Have been since I was 17 and put a bullet in a man's head because my father told me to. This? He gestured vaguely. This is just finishing what was started a long time ago. The resignation in his voice broke her heart. You're not destroyed. You're
a killer. That's what I am, what I've always been. And tonight I'm going to kill one more person. Then maybe... His jaw clenched. Maybe you can move on. Move on? Oilia stared at him. You think I want to move on? You think after everything we've... She stopped, chest heaving. I'm not some damsel waiting to be saved, Kael. I chose to tell the truth. I chose to fight. And I'm choosing to see this through. By doing what? Watching me become a murderer? You're not... But she couldn't finish. Because he was right. What he was planning was murder. Premeditated. Calculated. Everything Kael claimed to hate about his world. The door burst open. One of the coordinators, a thin man with glasses. We found him. Lucien's at a warehouse on the docks. He's got a helicopter waiting. Looks like he's running. Kael's expression went predatory. How many men? 4 that we can see. Maybe more inside. Good. Kael pushed past Oilia, already moving. Scramble everyone. We move in 10 minutes. Kael, wait. But he was gone, barking orders, coordinating the assault. Oilia stood alone in the small room and realized with creeping horror that she'd lost control of this completely. It had started as her truth, her justice. Now it was Kael's war, his mission, his descent into something dark and final, and she didn't know how to stop it. She followed him back into the main room, watched him strap on body armor, check his weapons. He moved with cold efficiency, every motion practiced, lethal. Let me come with you, she said. Kael didn't even look at her. No, I have a right. You have a right to live, which you won't do if you walk into a firefight. He finally met her eyes. Stay here. Elena will keep you safe when this is over. When this is over, you'll be a different person, Oilia finished. Or dead. Those are the options. Kael's expression softened fractionally. He crossed to her, pulled her close. I'm sorry. For all of this. For not being... He stopped. Tried again. You deserve better than me. Than this life. I don't want better. I want you. The admission tore out of her. Don't do this. There has to be another way. There isn't. He kissed her forehead. But thank you for trying to save me. Then he was gone, taking 6 armed men with him, leaving Oilia standing in the safe house with the terrible certainty that she'd just watched him walk toward his death. She lasted 5 minutes before she made a decision that would change everything. Elena was coordinating communications when Oilia approached. I need a car. No. I'm not asking permission. Oilia's voice was steel. Give me a car, or I walk. Your choice. Elena stared at her, saw something in her expression that made her shoulders slump. This is insane. I know. Kael will kill me. Only if he survives long enough. Oilia held out her hand. Keys. Elena pulled a set from her pocket. Black sedan, 2 blocks east. GPS is programmed. She grabbed Oilia's wrist. You get yourself killed. I'm not explaining it to him. If I get killed, he won't care. He'll already be dead. She took the keys and ran. The warehouse district was industrial wasteland. Abandoned buildings, broken streetlights, the kind of place where bad things happened and nobody asked questions. Oilia parked 3 blocks out and approached on foot, following the GPS coordinates Elena had loaded. She heard the gunfire before she saw the warehouse. Sharp cracks echoing between buildings. Shouting, the screech of tires. Oilia's heart hammered. She was too late. The assault had already started. She crept closer, using shadows and debris for cover. Through a gap in the fence, she saw Kael's team engaged with Lucien's guards. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness. Bodies dropped. Then she saw him. Kael, moving with lethal precision, taking down targets with cold efficiency. He was magnificent and terrifying and everything she'd feared. A killer. But he was her killer. And she wasn't letting him do this alone. Oilia slipped through a side entrance, praying no one would notice one more shadow in the chaos. The warehouse interior was a maze of shipping containers and catwalks. She followed the sound of gunfire deeper, adrenaline overriding every survival instinct screaming at her to run. She rounded a corner and froze. Kael stood 20 feet away, gun raised, facing down Lucien Dragor. Lucien had his own weapon drawn. They circled each other like wolves, neither willing to make the first move. It's over, Lucien, Kael said. Voice dead calm. Your mercenaries are dead. Your helicopter's not coming. Surrender, and I'll let you live long enough to see a trial. Lucien laughed. You really think this ends with me in a courtroom? How naive. His eyes cut past Kael and found Oilia in the shadows. Hello, sweetheart. Couldn't resist watching? Kael's attention snapped to her. In that half-second of distraction, Lucien moved. The shot was deafening in the enclosed space. Kael staggered, red bloomed across his side. No, Oilia screamed. Kael fired back, but the bullet went wide. He dropped to one knee, pressing a hand against the wound. Lucien advanced, gun trained on Kael's head. I told you to back down. Told you this would end badly, but you had to be the hero. He glanced at Oilia. And you. You just couldn't keep your mouth shut. Oilia's mind raced. Lucien was going to execute Kael right in front of her. She had seconds to do something, anything. Her eyes fell on a piece of rebar lying in the debris beside her. She grabbed it and lunged. Lucien spun, but not fast enough. The rebar caught him across the temple. He went down hard, gun skittering away. Oilia stood over him, chest heaving, rebar raised for another strike. But Lucien wasn't moving. Blood leaked from the head wound, pooling on concrete. She'd hit him, hard enough to kill. Oh God, she'd just... Oilia. Kael's voice cut through her shock. Put it down. She looked at him. At the blood soaking his shirt, the pain carved into his face. Then at Lucien, the man who'd tortured her for years, who'd started a war that killed dozens. The man she'd just possibly murdered. Her hand shook. The rebar clattered to the ground. Is he... She couldn't finish. Kael crawled closer, checked Lucien's pulse. Unconscious, bad concussion, but alive. Relief and disappointment warred in her chest. She'd wanted him dead, wanted it with a viciousness that scared her, but she hadn't delivered the killing blow. Maybe that made her better than him. Or maybe it just made her weak. Cale's phone buzzed. He answered with his free hand, the other still pressed against his side. Yeah? Good. Call an ambulance for both of them. Yeah, she's here. He hung up, looked at Oilia with an expression she couldn't read.
You weren't supposed to be here, he said quietly. I know. You could have died. So could you. They stared at each other across Lucien's unconscious body. The warehouse echoed with distant sirens, police, probably. The civilian authorities finally arriving. It's over, Kael said. Federal agents are on their way. They'll take Lucien into custody. Between the financial evidence and tonight's assault, he's done. You're hurt. I'll live. He tried to stand, couldn't quite manage it. Oilia rushed to his side, helped support his weight. We need to get you to a hospital. We need to get both of us out of here before the cops start asking questions. But Kael's voice was fading, blood loss catching up to him. Oilia heard boots on concrete. Kael's team appeared, weapons drawn, taking in the scene. Boss, one of them said, ambulance is here.
Good. Take Lucien. Make sure he lives long enough to stand trial. Kael's grip on Oilia tightened. And get us out of here. They moved as a unit, practiced, efficient. Within minutes, Oilia found herself in the back of a vehicle speeding away from the warehouse while paramedics worked on Kael beside her. She watched them pack the bullet wound, start an IV, stabilize him for transport. Watched Kael's eyes flutter closed as the adrenaline finally wore off. He'd gone to war for her, nearly died for her, destroyed his family's empire for her. And she'd saved his life with a piece of rebar and pure desperation. They were both irreparably changed, both covered in blood, literal and metaphorical, but they were alive. And Lucien Dragor was finally, definitively beaten. The vehicle pulled up to a private medical clinic. More paramedics rushed out. They loaded Kael onto a gurney and wheeled him inside. Oilia followed on shaking legs, Lucien's blood still drying on her hands, and wondered if this was what victory was supposed to feel like, because it felt an awful lot like drowning. The clinic smelled like antiseptic and old fear. Oilia sat in a plastic chair outside the surgical suite, hands still stained with Lucien's blood, and watched nurses rush past with the kind of practiced urgency that meant someone was dying. Not Kael. Please, not Kael. Elena appeared from somewhere, phone pressed to her ear, looking like she'd aged 10 years in the last 6 hours. She ended the call and dropped into the chair beside Oilia. Mira's awake, she said. Asking about you. Tell her I'm fine. You're not fine. You're covered in blood and shaking like a leaf. Elena's voice softened. The doctors say Kael's stable. Bullet went clean through, missed the major organs. He'll need surgery, but he'll live. He'll live. The word should have brought relief. Instead, Oilia felt nothing, just a vast, hollow numbness where her emotions used to be. What about Lucien? FBI has him. Conscious now, lawyered up, already spinning stories. Elena's jaw tightened. But we've got him cold. The financial records, the mercenaries we captured, witness testimony. He's going down. For how long? Life, maybe multiple life sentences if the prosecutors stack charges. Elena looked at her. It's over, Oilia. You won. Won. The word felt foreign. Oilia looked down at her blood-crusted hands and tried to find victory in them. Found only exhaustion. I hit him with a piece of rebar, she said quietly. I wanted to kill him. In that moment, I wanted him dead more than I've ever wanted anything. But you didn't kill him. Only because Kael stopped me. Oilia's voice cracked. What does that make me? Human. Elena squeezed her shoulder. You survived something awful, fought back when it mattered. That's not weakness, Oilia. That's strength. The surgical doors swung open. A doctor in blood-stained scrubs approached, pulling off her gloves. Mrs. Varelli? Oilia stood on legs that felt like water. Is he... Surgery went well. We removed the bullet, repaired the damage. He's lost a lot of blood, but he's stable. The doctor managed a tired smile. He's asking for you. Relief hit so hard Oilia nearly collapsed. Elena caught her elbow, steadied her. "Can I see him?" Oilia asked. "5 minutes. He needs rest, but—" The doctor's expression suggested she'd tried to tell Kael that and failed. Room 3. Down the hall. Oilia walked on autopilot, Elena trailing behind. Room 3 was small, dimly lit, medical equipment beeping steadily. And in the bed, looking pale but alive, was Kael. His eyes opened when she entered. "You look like hell." "You got shot." "I've had worse." His voice was rough, pain medication making the edges fuzzy. "You weren't supposed to be there." "I know." Oilia crossed to the bed, sank into the chair beside it. "I'm not good at following orders." "Noticed." Kael's hand found hers, grip weak but present. "You saved my life." "You saved mine first, multiple times." "Keeping score?" "Someone has to." Her throat tightened. "Kael, I'm sorry. For all of this. If I'd never—" "Don't." His grip tightened. "Don't apologize for telling the truth. Don't apologize for surviving. And definitely don't apologize for cracking Lucian's skull with a piece of metal. That was the sexiest thing I've ever seen." A laugh bubbled out of her. Hysterical and wrong, but real. "You were bleeding out." "Still sexy." Kael's expression sobered. "It's over, Oilia. Lucien's in federal custody. The evidence is airtight. He's never touching you again." The words should have brought relief. Instead, Oilia felt something crack open inside her chest. All the fear she'd been holding back for weeks, years, came flooding out in a wave that threatened to drown her. "I don't know how to feel safe," she whispered. "I've been scared for so long I don't remember what normal feels like." "Then we'll figure it out together." Kael pulled her closer, until her head rested against his shoulder. "One day at a time. One nightmare at a time. Whatever it takes." Elena cleared her throat from the doorway. "I hate to interrupt, but we've got a situation." Kael's expression hardened. "What kind of situation?" "The FBI wants to interview both of you. About tonight. About Lucien. About everything." Elena looked grim. "They're calling it a formal statement, but it's really an interrogation. They want to know how deep the Varelli family's involvement goes." "They think we're dirty," Kael said flatly. "They know you're dirty. Question is how dirty and whether they can prove it." Elena pulled out her tablet, started scrolling. "Our attorneys are preparing statements. Damage control. But Oilia, you're clean. You didn't know about the family business when you married in. You were a victim, not a participant. They won't touch you." "What about Kael?" Elena hesitated. That hesitation told Oilia everything. "They're building a RICO case," Kael said quietly. "Aren't they?" "Preliminary stages, but yeah." Elena's voice was careful. "Going after Lucien opened doors. The feds have been looking for a way into the Varelli organization for years. You handed them one." Kael closed his eyes. Pain flickered across his face. Not physical this time. "How bad?" "Could be nothing. Could be 20 years. Elena set down the tablet. "Depends on what they find. What deals they offer. How cooperative you're willing to be." "Cooperative meaning testify against my own family. Cooperative meaning survive this." The room went silent except for the beeping monitors. Oilia felt Kael's hand tighten around hers, felt the tension radiating through him. "When do they want to talk?" he asked finally. "Tomorrow, noon, Federal Building downtown." Elena looked between them. "You don't have to decide anything tonight, but Kael, think hard about what you're willing to sacrifice. Because the feds don't make deals out of kindness. They want everything." She left, closing the door softly behind her. Oilia sat in the silence, processing. Kael had destroyed Lucien, but in doing so, he'd exposed himself to federal prosecution. The war wasn't over. It had just changed battlefields. "You should run," Kael said quietly. "What?" Elena wasn't lying. "You're clean. The feds have nothing on you." He looked at her, expression unreadable. "Take the new identity she offered. New city, new life. Start over somewhere Lucien can't reach you and the FBI doesn't know your name. Without you. I'm going to prison, Oilia. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next month. But eventually the feds will build their case and I'll go down." His voice was flat, matter of fact. No reason for you to go down with me. Anger sparked through the numbness. So what? You fight a war for me and then tell me to disappear? That's your plan? That's reality. That's bullshit. Oilia stood, pacing the small room. You think I survived Lucian just to run away the second things get hard? You think I'm that weak? I think you're smart enough to know a losing battle when you see one. This isn't your call to make, Kael. It's mine. She stopped, faced him. I'm not running. I'm not leaving. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Even if it means watching me go to prison? Even then. Kael stared at her for a long moment. Then something in his expression shifted, the cold mask cracking to reveal something raw underneath. I don't deserve you, he said roughly. Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway. Oilia returned to the chair, took his hand again. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to sleep. Then we're going to meet with the FBI. Then we're going to figure out how to survive whatever happens next, together. You make it sound simple. It's not, but I'm done with complicated. She leaned in, pressed a kiss to his forehead. Rest. Doctor's orders. Kael's eyes were already drifting closed, pain medication and exhaustion winning. Stay. I'm not going anywhere. She settled into the uncomfortable chair and watched him sleep, their hands still linked, and tried to believe that somehow they'd survive this too. The FBI interview happened in a gray room with gray walls and gray furniture that sucked all the color out of the world. Oilia sat across from two agents, a man and a woman, both wearing identical expressions of professional skepticism, and tried not to feel like a suspect. Walk us through the night of the warehouse confrontation, the male agent, Morrison, said, not asked, commanded. Oilia had rehearsed this with the attorneys. Stick to facts. Don't speculate. Don't offer information they don't ask for. I followed Kael to the warehouse. I was concerned for his safety. You just happened to know where he was going? I overheard the location at the safe house. And you thought it was a good idea to walk into an active combat situation? I thought my husband was in danger. I wanted to help. Morrison made a note. Tell me about Lucien Dragor. Oilia's stomach clenched. This was the part she'd been dreading. What about him? Your relationship, how you knew him, why Kael Varelli declared war on a long-standing family ally. The female agent, Chen, leaned forward. We've read your initial statement, the allegations of sexual assault. We need to verify details. For the next 2 hours, Oilia relived every nightmare. The agents asked questions that felt like scalpels cutting into old wounds. When did it start? How often? Did anyone else know? Why didn't you report it? Question after question until Oilia felt flayed open and exposed. Through it all, she kept her voice steady, answered truthfully, let them see the scars Lucian had left. Finally, Morrison sat back. That's enough for today. We may need follow-up interviews. Am I being charged with anything? Should you be? Oilia met his eyes. I hit a man who was about to murder my husband. Self-defense. Is that a crime? Depends on the circumstances. The circumstances were I had 3 seconds to decide between watching Kael die or acting. I acted. She stood. Are we done? Chen stood too. For now. But Mrs. Varelli, we're building a case against the Varelli organization. Anyone who cooperates will be treated favorably. Anyone who obstructs will be prosecuted. You understand what I'm saying? You want me to testify against Kael. We want you to tell the truth about what you know. I've told you everything I know about Lucien. Everything else is speculation and hearsay. Oilia grabbed her bag. If you want to prosecute me for protecting my husband, go ahead, but I'm done talking without my lawyer present. She walked out before they could respond. Kael was waiting in the hallway, leaning against the wall in obvious pain but vertical. Their attorneys flanked him like bodyguards. How bad? He asked. They want me to flip on you. I know. They asked me the same thing about you. Oilia blinked. What did you tell them? That you didn't know anything about family business. That you were a victim caught in the crossfire. That if they went after you, I'd make their lives hell. Kael's smile was sharp. Lawyers are pretty sure they bought it. They also asked me to cooperate against the organization. One of the attorneys, Marcus, no relation to the dead uncle, said quietly, Full immunity in exchange for testimony. They're serious about this RICO case. How serious? Serious enough that they've got wiretaps, financial records, witness statements. They've been building this for months. Lucien was just the opening they needed. Cale's expression went cold. Who's talking? 3 lower-level soldiers, 2 mid-tier managers, and… Marcus hesitated. Antonio, from the board. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Oilia saw it in Kael's face the moment he realized one of his own had turned. Antonio's been with the family for 30 years, Kael said quietly, and he's been talking to the FBI for 6 months, ever since you started going after Lucy Yan. Marcus pulled out a file. He's giving them everything: operations, territory, money laundering, murders going back a decade. Jesus. It gets worse. He's claiming you ordered hits, that you personally executed rivals, that you're the real power behind the Virelli Empire and have been since Marcus died. Kael went very still, that dangerous stillness that preceded violence. He's lying. Doesn't matter. The feds have enough corroboration to make charges stick. We're looking at multiple counts of racketeering, conspiracy to commit murder, money laundering. Marcus closed the file. Kael, they're offering a deal. Plead guilty to reduce charges, cooperate with the investigation. You could be out in 10 years. Or fight it and spend the rest of your life in prison. The words hung in the sterile hallway. Oilia felt her world tilt. 10 years minimum. Possibly life. That was the price of justice. What about the organization? Kael asked. If I take the deal, what happens to everyone else? Depends on how cooperative you are. They want the whole structure. Names, operations, everything. You give them that, they'll go easier on the lower-level people. You refuse… Marcus shrugged. They prosecute everyone they can reach. Kael looked at Oilia. She saw the calculation happening behind his eyes, the weight of every choice pressing down. I need to think, he said finally. You've got 48 hours. Then they withdraw the offer and proceed with full prosecution. Marcus handed him the file. Read it. Talk to Oilia. Make a decision. They walked out, leaving Kael and Oilia alone in the hallway. 10 years, Oilia said quietly. Minimum, if I'm lucky. And if you fight it, life. Maybe death penalty if they push for murder charges. Kael leaned heavily against the wall, pain and exhaustion catching up. But if I take the deal, I have to give them everything. Everyone. Burn down the organization I've spent my entire adult life building. To save yourself. To save you. He looked at her. The deal includes immunity for immediate family. You'd be protected, safe, free. Understanding clicked. You're thinking about taking it. I'm thinking about options. Kael straightened, wincing. Let's get out of here. I can't think in this building. Yes. They went to a hotel. Neutral ground, no surveillance, no family members demanding answers, just a quiet room with a view of the Chicago skyline and space to breathe. Kael sat on the bed, reading through the plea agreement. Oilia stood at the window, watching the city lights blur together, and tried to imagine 10 years without him. It's comprehensive, Kael said finally. They want testimony against 47 people, including family members, friends, people I've known my entire life. Would they deserve it? Some of them. The ones who committed real crimes, murder, trafficking, extortion. They should face consequences. He set down the papers. But others are just kids who grew up in this life same as me, who never had a choice about what family they were born into. Do they deserve federal prison because I decided to cooperate? Oilia turned from the window. Do you deserve federal prison because you fought for justice? I deserve prison for a lot of reasons that have nothing to do with you or Lucien. Kael's voice was flat. I've killed people, Oilia. Ordered hits, destroyed lives. The fact that I did it for my family doesn't make it righteous. So take the deal, serve your time, come out the other side and build something different. You make it sound simple. It is simple. It's also impossible. Oilia crossed to the bed, sat beside him. There's no good choice here, Kael. Every option ends with people hurt. The question is which hurt you can live with. Kael was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, when I was 17 and my father put that gun in my hand, I had a choice. Pull the trigger or refuse. I pulled it because refusing meant exile, meant losing my family, my identity, everything I knew. He looked at her. I've been pulling triggers ever since, following orders, building the empire, never questioning if it was right, just if it was necessary. And now I'm questioning everything. His hand found hers. You walked into my life and made me see what I'd become. Made me want to be something better. But wanting isn't the same as being, Oilia. I can't undo 32 years of choices with one plea agreement. No, but you can start making different choices going forward. Kale's thumb traced circles on her palm. If I take this deal, I'll be in prison for a decade. You'll be alone. I survived Lucian alone. I can survive the FBI. I don't want you to have to survive. I want you to live. The raw honesty in his voice broke something inside her. Oilia shifted closer until she could rest her forehead against his. Then live with me, she whispered. However that looks, whatever that means. Prison visits, phone calls, letters, I don't care. Just don't give up. Kael's arms came around her, pulling her close. She felt his breath hitch, felt the tremor in his hands. I'm scared, he admitted. So quiet she almost missed it. I faced down rivals, survived assassination attempts, gone to war. But the thought of losing you, that terrifies me. You're not losing me. If I go to prison, then I'll wait. Oilia pulled back enough to meet his eyes. 10 years, 20 years, life, I'll wait. Because you're worth waiting for. Something shifted in Kael's expression. The cold mask he wore cracked completely, revealing the man underneath. Vulnerable, broken, desperately trying to be worthy of the faith she was placing in him. He kissed her. Soft at first, then deeper, pouring everything he couldn't say into the contact. Oilia kissed back with equal desperation, tasting salt. His tears or hers, she wasn't sure. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kael rested his forehead against hers. I'm taking the deal, he said quietly. I'm going to cooperate, testify, burn it all down and serve my time. His voice strengthened. And when I get out, I'm going to spend the rest of my life being the man you deserve. You're already that man. No, but I'm going to try to become him. They held each other as the Chicago night deepened outside, both knowing this was the beginning of a different kind of war. Not violence, not blood, just the slow, grinding battle to survive the consequences of doing the right thing. The next 48 hours blurred into strategy sessions with attorneys, negotiations with federal prosecutors, and tearful conversations with family members who felt betrayed by Kael's decision to cooperate. Mira was the worst. She confronted Kael in the hotel lobby, still bandaged from her gunshot wound, fury radiating from every pore. You're turning on us, she said. Not shouted. The quiet accusation cut deeper. After everything we've been through, you're selling us out. I'm trying to save lives, Kael said tiredly, including yours. By putting me in federal prison? By making sure you have a chance at immunity. The deal includes protections for family members who cooperate. You testify about the parts you know, you walk away clean. And if I don't want to testify? Then you go down with everyone else. Kael's voice was steel. Your choice, Mira. She stared at him with something like hatred. I used to respect you. Thought you were strong, principled. Her laugh was bitter. Turns out you're just another coward who breaks when the pressure gets high enough. The words landed like blows. Oilia watched Kael absorb them without flinching, watched him hold his ground even as his cousin cut him apart. I'm sorry you feel that way, he said finally, but my decision stands. Mira looked at Oilia. This is your fault. You came into this family and poisoned him, made him weak. No, Kael cut in. She made me see clearly. There's a difference. Is there? Mira's eyes glittered with unshed tears. Because from where I'm standing, you're destroying everything our family built for a woman you barely know. Tell me how that's strength. She walked away before either of them could respond. Oilia felt sick. She's right. This is my fault. No, it's mine. Kael watched Mira disappear through the hotel doors. I made choices that led here. I could have handled Lucian differently, could have protected you without starting a war, but I didn't, and now we're all paying the price. Do you regret it? Kael looked at her. Not for a second. The plea hearing happened on a gray Tuesday that felt like the end of the world. Kael stood in federal court, flanked by attorneys, and formally pled guilty to 3 counts of racketeering, 2 counts of conspiracy, and 1 count of obstruction of justice. The judge accepted the plea, set sentencing for 6 weeks out. Kael was released on bond pending sentencing, ankle monitor attached, movements restricted. He had 6 weeks of freedom left. They spent it preparing. Kael gave depositions, named names, provided evidence that would dismantle the Virelli organization piece by piece. And through it all, Oilia stood beside him, watching the man she loved systematically destroy everything he'd ever known. It was brutal, necessary, heartbreaking. The sentencing hearing arrived too fast. Oilia sat in the courtroom gallery, hands clenched in her lap, and watched Kael stand before the judge. "Mr. Virelli," the judge said, "you've pled guilty to serious crimes. You've also provided substantial cooperation to federal authorities. The prosecution recommends 12 years, eligible for parole in 8. Do you have anything to say before I impose sentence?" Kael was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke, voice carrying through the silent courtroom. "I've spent my entire life in a world built on violence and fear. I thought that was strength. Thought being ruthless meant being powerful." He paused. "I was wrong. Real strength is admitting when you've failed. Real power is choosing to be better." He looked back at Oilia. Their eyes met across the courtroom. "I can't undo the harm I've caused. Can't bring back the people who died because of my choices. But I can accept responsibility, face consequences, and try to build something worth salvaging from the wreckage." He turned back to the judge. "I'm ready for whatever sentence you impose. I deserve it." The judge studied him for a long moment. 10 years. Eligible for parole in 7 with good behavior, followed by 5 years supervised release. The gavel fell. It was done. Marshals moved forward to take Kael into custody. He had time for one last look back, one final moment to lock eyes with Oilia before they led him away. She mouthed 3 words. "I'll be waiting." Kael nodded. Then he was gone, swallowed by the federal system, and Oilia was left sitting alone in a courtroom watching her husband disappear. The first 6 months were the hardest. Oilia had to adjust to life outside the Virelli world. No guards, no estate, no security network. Just her in a modest apartment and the deafening silence of being alone. She visited Kael every week. Federal prison in Terre Haute, Indiana. 3-hour drive each way. She made it every Sunday without fail, sitting across from him in the visitation room, talking about everything and nothing. He looked different behind bars. Harder, older, but his eyes still softened when he saw her. "You don't have to keep coming," he said during the 3rd month. "It's a long drive." "I'm not stopping." "Oilia." 7 years, Kael. I can do 7 years of Sunday drives." She reached across the table, touched his hand. "Stop trying to push me away. I'm trying to give you an out. I don't want an out. I want you." His fingers laced with hers. "I love you. Haven't said it enough. Should have said it before everything went to hell. You're saying it now. That's what matters." They talked for the full 2 hours. When visiting time ended, Oilia drove back to Chicago with a lighter heart than when she'd arrived. She could do this. They could do this. Meanwhile, the trials continued. One by one, members of the Virelli organization faced federal prosecution. Some took deals. Others fought and lost. The empire Kael had helped build crumbled into dust. Lucien's trial was the biggest. Federal prosecutors threw everything at him. The assaults, the conspiracy, the murders he'd ordered. Oilia testified, sat on the witness stand and told her story to a jury of strangers. It was excruciating, exposing every wound, reliving every nightmare. But she did it. And when the jury came back with guilty verdicts on all counts, when the judge imposed 6 consecutive life sentences with no possibility of parole, Oilia felt something shift inside her. Justice. Imperfect, messy, costly. But justice nonetheless. She walked out of that courthouse and called Kael with the news. "It's over," she said when he answered. "Lucien's going away forever." "How do you feel?" Oilia thought about it. "Free. For the first time in my life, I feel free." Kael's voice was rough. "I'm proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you.
Yes, you could have. You're stronger than you know, Oilia. Maybe he was right. Maybe she'd always had that strength and just needed someone to believe in her enough to let it surface. 6.5 years left, she said quietly. Then you come home. Then I come home, Kael agreed.
Odd. But the world had other plans. 3 months later, Oilia was leaving her apartment for another Sunday drive when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Mrs. Varelli? A woman's voice. Official. This is Warden Phillips at FCI Terre Haute. There's been an incident. Oilia's heart stopped. What kind of incident? Your husband was attacked in the exercise yard. Another inmate. He's alive, but... A pause. You should get here as soon as possible. The drive to Indiana had never felt longer. Oilia pushed the speed limit, hands white-knuckled on the wheel, mind racing through worst-case scenarios. Kael was alive. That's what the warden had said. But how badly hurt? Who attacked him? Why? She made the drive in 2.5 hours and was escorted immediately to the prison medical wing. A doctor met her outside Kael's room. He's stable, the doctor said. Multiple stab wounds to the torso. We've repaired the damage, but he's lost a lot of blood. The next 24 hours are critical. Can I see him? 5 minutes. Oilia pushed through the door and stopped. Kael lay in the hospital bed, tubes and wires connected to his body, machines beeping steadily. He looked pale, fragile, nothing like the man who'd taken down an empire. His eyes opened when she approached. Hey yourself, Oilia's voice cracked. You promised me 7 years. It's only been 9 months. Sorry, got jumped in the yard. His attempt at a smile turned into a grimace. Turns out testifying against your organization makes you unpopular in prison. Who knew? Who did this? Guy I put away. Had friends inside. They paid someone to shiv me. Kael's hand found hers. Warden's moving me to protective custody. Should have done it from the start. Should have done a lot of things from the start. Oilia blinked back tears. You're not allowed to die, Kael. Not after everything. Not planning on it. Good, because I have plans for you. 7 years of plans, and they all require you being alive. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. Tell me. So she did. Sitting beside his prison hospital bed, Oilia talked about the future, about the apartment she was fixing up, about the foundation she was starting to help other survivors, about the life they'd build when he finally came home. Kael listened with his eyes closed, breathing steady, holding her hand like an anchor. When her 5 minutes were up and the guards came to escort her out, Oilia leaned down and kissed his forehead. Don't you dare give up, she whispered. Not a chance, Kael whispered back. She left the medical wing and collapsed in her car, letting herself fall apart in a way she hadn't since the warehouse. This was supposed to be over. Lucienne was gone. The trials were done. They were supposed to just wait out the time and rebuild. But violence had followed Kael behind bars. And now Oilia faced a new terror, that she might lose him not to federal prosecution, but to revenge from the people he'd helped convict. Her phone buzzed. Text from Elena. Heard about the attack. I'm working on getting him transferred to a safer facility. Hang in there. Oilia texted back a thank you and sat in the prison parking lot watching the sun set behind razor wire fences. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. But then again, nothing about their story had ever followed the plan. She started the car and drove back to Chicago, making new plans, adapting to this latest crisis. Because that's what survivors did. They adapted, they endured, they refused to break, and when the world knocked them down, they got back up and fought harder. Oilia had survived Lucien Dragor. She'd survived watching her husband go to prison. She'd survived testifying in court and dismantling a criminal empire. She could survive this too. She would survive. They both would. Because 7 years wasn't forever. And after everything they'd been through, Oilia had learned one fundamental truth. Some things were worth waiting for. Some people were worth fighting for. And Kael Varelli was both. The road stretched out before her, headlights cutting through gathering darkness, and Oilia drove toward whatever came next with her jaw set and her spine straight. The war had changed shape again. But she was done running, done hiding, done being afraid. Whatever happened next, she'd face it head on, just like Kael had taught her, just like she'd always been capable of doing. The future was uncertain, dangerous, filled with obstacles she couldn't predict. But for the first time in her entire life, Oilia wasn't afraid of it. She was ready. Kael survived the attack. Barely. The prison transferred him to a federal medical facility in Illinois, where he spent 3 weeks in intensive care before finally being cleared to move into protective custody at a different facility. Oilia visited every chance she got, watching him heal in increments, first just breathing on his own, then sitting up, then taking careful steps around the small medical wing.
"You look better," she said during week 4, sitting beside his bed while he ate terrible hospital food.
Liar. But Kael's smile was real. Tired, but real. Doctor says I can transfer to the new facility next week. Supermax? Protective custody wing. Not quite Supermax, but close. He set down the fork. It's solitary, Oilia. 23 hours a day in a cell. 1 hour for exercise. No contact with general population. So you'll be safe.
"I'll be alone." His eyes found hers. For 6.5 more years. The weight of it hung between them.
Oilia had researched protective custody, knew what it did to people. The isolation, the sensory deprivation. Men went mad in those cells, lost themselves in the endless nothing.
"I'll still visit," she said quietly. "Through glass. No contact. Just talking on phones while we look at each other through barriers." Kael's voice was rough. "That's not a life, Oilia. Not for you."
It's the life we have. You could have a different life. Better life.
He reached for her hand, stopped when he remembered the guards wouldn't allow contact. His hand fell back to the bed.
Elena said the foundation is taking off, that you're helping women escape situations like yours. That's important work. It is. Work that would be easier without a convicted felon for a husband. Oilia went very still. What are you saying? I'm saying you have options. The attorneys can file for divorce, quietly. You keep your name or change it. Start fresh. No one would blame you. I would blame me. Oilia. No. She leaned forward as far as the guards would allow. You don't get to martyr yourself. Not after everything. You think I survived Lucien just to abandon you when things get hard? You think I'm that weak? I think you're strong enough to walk away from something that's destroying you.
This isn't destroying me. It's making me stronger. Oilia's voice shook with intensity. Every Sunday I drive 3 hours to sit with you. Every week I testify at trials or help another woman find her voice. Every day I wake up and choose to build something from the wreckage. That's not destruction, Kael. That's survival. He stared at her. Why? Why what? Why fight for this? For me? I'm a criminal who's going to spend the next 6 years in a cell. What future do we possibly have?
Oilia thought about the girl she'd been 2 years ago, broken, silent, convinced she deserved every bad thing that happened to her. Then she thought about the woman sitting here now, scarred but whole, afraid but fighting anyway. You gave me my voice back, she said quietly. When I whispered, please don't hurt me at our wedding, you could have taken what you wanted anyway. That's what powerful men do. But you didn't. You gave me space, respect, the choice to heal at my own pace. Her eyes burned. And when I finally told you about Lucien, you believed me, fought for me, burned down your entire world to get me justice. I also got a lot of people killed.
Yeah, you did. Oilia didn't flinch from the truth. You made brutal choices, hurt innocent people, destroyed lives. You're not a hero, Kael. You're a man who did terrible things for complicated reasons. She leaned back. But you're also the man who showed me I was worth fighting for. And I'm going to spend the next 6 years showing you the same thing. Kael's throat worked. I don't deserve you.
Probably not. But 6.5 years from now, when you walk out of here, you're going to try to become someone who does. She managed to smile. That's the deal. I wait. You work on being better. We meet in the middle. And if I can't become better, then we figure it out together. Oilia stood as the guard signaled visiting time was ending. I'm not giving up on you, Kael, so stop giving up on yourself. She left before he could argue, walked out of the medical facility and sat in her car for 20 minutes, trying to pull herself together. The road ahead was brutal. Years of prison visits through glass, years of sleeping alone, years of building a life around someone who couldn't be there. But she'd survived worse. And this time, she wasn't surviving for someone else. She was surviving for herself. For the future they'd build when the time came. For the woman she was becoming. Oilia started the car and drove back to Chicago, already planning next week's visit. The foundation became her anchor. Oilia threw herself into the work, helping survivors escape abuse, providing legal resources, creating safe spaces where women could heal. She named it the Vance Foundation, reclaiming the name her father had sold along with her dignity. 6 months after Kael's transfer, they had their first major success. A young woman named Sarah, not Sarah Chen, a different Sarah, walked through the door with a black eye and a daughter in her arms. "I need help," she said. Simple, desperate. Oilia got her help. Safe housing, legal representation, therapy, resources to rebuild. 3 months later, Sarah had a restraining order, full custody, and a job that let her support herself. "Thank you," Sarah said during their final meeting. "You saved my life." "No," Oilia said gently. "You saved your life. I just gave you the tools." After Sarah left, Oilia sat in her office and cried. Not sad tears. Relief tears. She'd turned her trauma into something useful. Something that mattered. She told Kael about it during their next visit. He listened from the other side of the glass partition, phone pressed to his ear, and smiled. "I'm proud of you," he said. "I learned from the best." Oilia studied his face through the glass. He looked thinner, harder. The isolation was taking its toll. "How are you holding up?" "One day at a time," his standard answer. "Reading a lot? Thinking. Working on my GED." "You never finished high school?" "Hard to attend class when you're running criminal operations." A shadow crossed his face. "Figure it's time to fix that. Maybe take some college courses. Can't do much else with 23 hours a day." They talked for the full hour about nothing and everything. When visiting time ended, Oilia pressed her palm against the glass. Kael mirrored it on his side. It was the closest they could get to touching. 6 years left, she said. 5 years, 10 months, Kael corrected. But who's counting? Oilia smiled. "See you next week. I'll be here." Year 2 brought complications. The federal trials finally wrapped up, dozens of Virelli associates convicted, the organization officially dismantled. But some people slipped through the cracks, and some of those people blamed Kael. The first threat arrived via email, short, direct. "Your husband killed my brother. You'll pay for that." Oilia forwarded it to the FBI. They investigated, found nothing actionable, told her to be careful. The second threat was more direct. Someone slashed her tires outside the foundation office. No witnesses, no cameras, just a message that they could reach her if they wanted. Elena pushed for security. "You need protection." "I need to keep working," Oilia countered. "I'm not hiding because someone's trying to scare me." "They're not trying to scare you, they're trying to hurt you." "Let them try." But she upgraded the office security, hired a driver, varied her routines, lived with one eye over her shoulder, constantly alert. She didn't tell Kael. He had enough to worry about in protective custody, no need to add her safety to the list. Then the threats escalated. Oilia was leaving the office late one Thursday when someone grabbed her in the parking garage. Strong hands, chemical smell. She fought. Everything Kael had taught her about survival kicked in, and managed to knee her attacker hard enough to break free. She ran, made it to her car, locked the doors, called 911 with shaking hands. The police found her attacker 2 blocks away, mid-level enforcer for what remained of a rival family. He was carrying zip ties and a knife. The intent was clear. "You were lucky," the detective told her at the station. "If you hadn't fought back—" "I know." Oilia's hands wouldn't stop shaking. "What happens now?" "We charge him. You testify. He goes away." The detective leaned forward. "But Mrs. Virelli, this is the 3rd incident in 6 months. You need to take this seriously." "I am taking it seriously." "Then maybe consider protective custody for yourself, or witness relocation. The FBI can—" "No." Oilia's voice was firm. "I'm not running. I'm not hiding, and I'm not giving up my life because some cowards want revenge." She meant it, but that night, alone in her apartment with triple-locked doors, she finally broke down. Called Kyle, even though it wasn't visiting day, even though phone calls were restricted. He answered on the second ring. Oilia, what's wrong? Someone tried to grab me, tonight, in the parking garage. Silence on the other end. Then Kyle's voice, dangerously quiet. Are you hurt? No, I fought him off. Police got him. She pressed her palm against her eyes. But Kyle, I'm scared. I'm trying to be strong, but... You are strong. The strongest person I know. His voice was fierce. But being strong doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and fighting anyway. I don't know how much longer I can fight. Yes, you do. Because you've been fighting your whole life. A pause. Listen to me. This is what we're going to do. Tomorrow you're going to call Elena and set up better security. Then you're going to call the FBI and coordinate protection. Then you're going to keep doing your work because that work matters. What if they come after me again? Then you fight them off again, and again, until they realize you're not worth the effort. Kale's voice softened. I can't protect you from in here. It's killing me. But you can protect yourself. I've seen you do it. Oilia thought about the warehouse, the piece of rebar, the moment she chose to fight instead of freeze. Okay, she whispered. Okay, that's my girl. She could hear the smile in his voice. 5 years, 9 months left. Then I'm out, and anyone who touches you answers to me. You're not supposed to threaten people from prison. That wasn't a threat. That was a promise. They talked until the guards cut the call. Oilia hung up feeling steadier, still scared but ready to keep fighting, because that's what survivors did. Year 3 was the turning point. The attacker from the parking garage went to trial and got 20 years. His associates got the message. Going after Oilia Varelli brought more trouble than it was worth. The threats stopped. The foundation expanded. Oilia hired staff, opened a second location, partnered with legal aid organizations. They helped over 200 women in year 3 alone. 200 lives changed. 200 futures reclaimed. She started speaking publicly. At conferences, universities, advocacy groups, telling her story not for pity but for power, showing other survivors that healing was possible, that justice, messy and imperfect as it was, could be won. You're becoming famous, Mira said during a rare phone call. They'd reconciled slowly over the years. Mira had taken her own plea deal, served 6 months, and walked away from the family business entirely. Now she ran a legitimate security consulting firm and occasionally helped the foundation with safety planning. I'm becoming useful, Oilia corrected. There's a difference. You're becoming both. Mira hesitated. I was wrong. About you. About Kyle. I blamed you for destroying the family when really the family was already rotten. You just made us see it. That couldn't have been easy to admit. Nothing about the last 3 years has been easy. Mira's voice was rough. But I'm trying. Same as you. Same as Kyle. We're all trying to be better than we were. It was the closest thing to an apology Oilia was going to get. She took it. How's he doing? Mira asked. Really doing? He's surviving, reading philosophy, taking correspondence courses in business ethics. The irony isn't lost on him. Oilia smiled. He writes me letters, real letters, not emails. Says it gives him time to think about what he wants to say. What does he say? That he's sorry, that he's proud of me, that he's counting down the days. Her throat tightened. That he loves me. Do you believe him? Oilia thought about the man who'd stood in federal court and accepted responsibility for his crimes. The man who spent his days in isolation working to become someone worthy of a second chance. Yeah, she said. I believe him. Year 4 brought unexpected developments. Kyle's behavior in prison was exemplary. No incidents, completed multiple educational programs, even helped mediate disputes in his protective custody wing. His attorneys filed for early parole consideration. The hearing was scheduled for month 48, exactly 4 years into his sentence. Oilia sat in the parole board hearing room, hands clenched in her lap, while Kale made his case via video link from the prison. I'm not going to claim I'm rehabilitated, he said to the board. 4 years isn't enough time to undo 32 years of choices. But I'm different. I've spent every day of my incarceration working to understand what I became and why. I've completed anger management, victim empathy courses, business ethics programs. I've earned my GED and 2 years of college credits. One of the board members leaned forward. Mr. Varelli, you were complicit in numerous violent crimes. You ordered hits on rival organizations. People died because of your choices. Why should we believe you won't return to that life? Because that life destroyed everyone I cared about. Kael's voice was steady. Including myself. I watched my uncle get murdered. I watched my organization fall apart. I watched the woman I loved nearly die because of wars I started. He looked directly at the camera. I can't undo the past, but I can choose not to repeat it. And I choose differently. What would you do if released? Work. Legitimate work. I have a job offer from a construction company that hires former inmates. I'd report to my parole officer, attend required counseling, stay away from anyone connected to my old life. A pause. And I'd spent every day trying to deserve the woman who waited for me. The board deliberated for 3 hours. Oilia sat in the hallway, leg bouncing with anxiety, while they decided Kael's fate. Finally, they called her back in. Mr. Varelli, the board chair said, we've reviewed your case thoroughly. Your cooperation with federal authorities and your exemplary conduct in custody weigh in your favor. However, the severity of your crimes cannot be discounted. Oilia's heart sank. They were going to deny it. Therefore, the chair continued, we're granting parole effective in 18 months, contingent on continued good behavior and completion of additional programming. 18 months. Not freedom today, but not the full 6 years either. Oilia's eyes burned with tears she refused to shed in public. On the screen, Kael closed his eyes briefly. Thank you. Don't make us regret this, Mr. Varelli. I won't, Otsem. The next 18 months crawled and flew simultaneously. Oilia prepared for Kael's release with meticulous planning. She found them an apartment far from the old Varelli territory, set up job interviews, coordinated with his parole officer, built a support system of therapists and counselors. She also prepared herself. Years of therapy had helped her process the trauma, had taught her that loving Kael didn't mean erasing his past or her own. They were both broken people trying to build something whole from the pieces. Are you nervous? Her therapist asked during a session 3 months before release. Terrified, Oilia admitted. We've spent 5.5 years communicating through glass and letters. What if the reality doesn't match what we've built in our heads? Then you'll figure it out together, same as you've figured out everything else. What if he can't adjust? What if prison changed him too much? What if it changed him exactly enough? The therapist leaned forward. You're both different people than you were. That's not failure, that's growth. Oilia held on to those words as the release date approached. The last visit before parole was bittersweet. Oilia sat across from Kael in the familiar visitation room, phone pressed to her ear, studying his face like she could memorize it. 72 hours, she said. 72 hours, Kael repeated. His hand was pressed against the glass. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and find out this is a dream, that I'm not really getting out. You're getting out, and you'll be there? I'll be there. Oilia matched his hand placement on her side of the glass. I've been there every week for 5.5 years. I'm not stopping now. What if I'm not what you remember? Then we'll figure out who you are now. She smiled. We're good at figuring things out. Kael's expression softened. I wrote you something. They'll give it to you when I'm processed out. Don't read it until you're alone. What is it? Everything I couldn't say through glass. His eyes held hers. I love you, Oilia. That hasn't changed. Won't change. I love you too. The guard signaled time was up. Oilia stood slowly, reluctant to leave, even knowing she'd see him in 3 days. Next time we talk, she said. No barriers. No barriers, Kael agreed. Release day arrived cold and bright. Early March in Chicago, snow melting into gray slush, the city caught between winter and spring. Oilia stood outside the prison gates at 6 a.m., breath misting in the cold, watching the entrance. Elena stood beside her. Mira had come too, despite everything. They formed a small, strange support system. You okay? Elena asked. Ask me again in an hour. The prison gates opened, A figure emerged, tall, lean, wearing donated civilian clothes that didn't quite fit. Kale stopped just outside the gates and looked around like he couldn't quite believe he was there. Then his eyes found Oilia. She started walking, then running, closed the distance between them in seconds, and threw her arms around him for the first time in 5.5 years. Kyle caught her, arms coming around her tight enough to hurt. He buried his face in her hair and just held on. "You're real," he said against her shoulder. "You're actually real." "So are you." Oilia pulled back enough to see his face, older, harder, but his eyes were the same. "Hi." "Hi." Kale's smile was tentative, disbelieving. "You waited." "I told you I would." He kissed her. Gentle at first, then deeper, pouring 5.5 years of separation into the contact. Oilia kissed back with equal intensity, tasting salt. His tears or hers, she couldn't tell. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Elena cleared her throat. "Not to interrupt," she said dryly, "but we should probably get out of here before the press shows up." Right. Kale Varelli's release had made the news. Reporters would be circling. They piled into Elena's car and drove away from the prison. Kyle sat in the back seat, holding Oilia's hand like he was afraid she'd disappear if he let go. "How does it feel?" Mira asked from the front. "Surreal." Kyle looked out the window at the passing landscape. "Everything's different, bigger, faster, louder." "You'll adjust," Elena said. "Give it time." They drove to the apartment Oilia had prepared. Small but clean. Furnished simply. A place to start over. Kale walked through it slowly, taking in every detail. "You did this?" "We did this," Oilia corrected. "You worked for it, earned it. This is your second chance." He turned to face her. "Our second chance." "Yeah," she smiled. "Ours." Elena and Mira left, giving them privacy. Oilia showed Kyle around. The bedroom, the kitchen, the small balcony with its view of the city. He touched everything like he couldn't quite believe it was real. "I have something for you," Oilia said finally. She pulled out the letter the prison had given her. "You said to read it alone, but—" "Read it now." Kyle sat on the couch. "I want to see your face." Oilia opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was several pages of Kyle's handwriting, cramped from years of writing on prison forms, but still legible. She read aloud. "Oilia, I'm writing this 3 days before release because I need you to understand something before we start this next chapter. I'm not the man you married. That man was arrogant, ruthless, convinced he could control everything through force and fear. Prison broke that man. Good. He needed breaking." Her voice caught. Kale gestured for her to continue. "The man walking out of here is different, humbler, more aware of his capacity for harm. I've spent 5.5 years thinking about the violence I committed, the lives I destroyed, the pain I caused. There's no redemption arc big enough to erase that, no amount of good behavior that makes me innocent. But you showed me something I'd never seen before, that broken things can be rebuilt, that survival isn't just enduring but growing. You took your trauma and created something beautiful, a foundation that helps others, a life that matters." Oilia's hands trembled. "I want to do the same. I want to take the broken pieces of who I was and build something worth keeping. I don't know if I can. Don't know if I deserve the chance, but I'm going to try. For you, for the women you help, for everyone I hurt. I love you. Not because you saved me. You didn't. I saved myself by finally making different choices. But you showed me those choices existed. You gave me a reason to believe better was possible. So here's my promise. I will work every day to deserve you. I will never raise my hand in anger. I will never use my past as an excuse. I will build a legitimate life and be the partner you deserve. And if I fail, if the man I've become isn't enough, I will let you go. Because you deserve someone whole, someone good, someone who doesn't carry the weight of dozens of deaths. But God, I hope I don't fail, because these 5.5 years showed me what life could be. And I want that life. With you. Building something real from the ashes." Oilia's voice failed. She looked up at Kyle through tears. He was crying too, silent tears tracking down his face. "I meant every word," he said roughly. "I know. I'm going to screw up, make mistakes, probably disappoint you.
I'm going to screw up too. Oilia set down the letter. We're both damaged, Kael, both carrying scars, but we're also both survivors, both fighters, and we're choosing to fight for this. She crossed to him. Kael pulled her into his lap, arms coming around her, and they held each other while the Chicago afternoon faded into evening. Thank you, he whispered against her hair. For what? For waiting, for believing, for giving me a reason to be better.
You gave me the same thing. Oilia pulled back to look at him. Now we figure out how to be better together. Together, Kael agreed. The first year of freedom was harder than prison in some ways. Kael struggled with crowds, loud noises, sudden movements. PTSD from 5.5 years in protective custody made the outside world overwhelming. But he worked at it, attended therapy, took his medications, showed up for his parole appointments, worked construction jobs that left him exhausted but proud. Oilia watched him rebuild himself piece by piece and fell deeper in love with the man he was becoming. They had setbacks. Nights when Kael woke up screaming, convinced he was back in his cell. Days when Oilia's own trauma resurfaced and she couldn't bear to be touched. Moments when they both wanted to give up. But they didn't give up. They fought through it together. 6 months after release, Kael proposed. Not with a ring, he couldn't afford one yet, but with words. We've been married for 7 years, he said over dinner in their small apartment. But we've never had a real marriage, a chosen one. I want that. I want to marry you again, not because of a business arrangement or family obligations, because I choose you every day, for the rest of my life. Oilia's eyes filled. You're already my husband. I want to be your husband again, the right way. Kael took her hands. Will you marry me? Again? For real this time? Yes. She laughed through tears. Yes, you idiot. Of course, yes. They held the ceremony 9 months after Kael's release. Small, private. Just Elena, Mira, a few people from the foundation, and a judge who owed Elena a favor. No family. The Varellis were scattered, some in prison, some in witness protection, some who'd disappeared entirely. No empire, no politics, just 2 people choosing each other. Oilia wore a simple white dress. Kael wore a suit from a thrift store. They stood in a small garden in Lincoln Park while the judge read the vows. When it came time for personal statements, Kael went first. 7 years ago, I married a terrified girl who whispered, "Please don't hurt me," when I lifted her veil. I promised myself then that I'd never be the man who made her afraid. His voice was steady. I broke that promise, became someone who caused fear in everyone around me, someone who solved problems with violence. He looked at Oilia. But you showed me another way. You survived horrors I can't imagine and turned that survival into strength, into purpose. You built something beautiful from ashes, and you gave me the chance to do the same. So today I'm making new promises. I promise to never raise my hand in anger, to never solve problems with violence, to work every day to be worthy of the faith you've placed in me. I promise to support your work, your healing, your growth. And I promise to love you, not the idea of you, but the real, complicated, beautifully broken you, for the rest of my life. Tears streamed down Oilia's face. She took a shaky breath and spoke her own vows. 7 years ago, I married a stranger because I had no choice. Today, I'm marrying my best friend because it's the only choice I want to make. Her voice strengthened. You've seen me at my worst, broken, terrified, barely surviving. And you didn't try to fix me. You gave me space to fix myself. Believed I was strong enough to heal. That belief changed everything. It gave me permission to stop being a victim and start being a survivor, to turn my pain into purpose. She squeezed his hands. So I promise to support your growth the same way you supported mine. To be patient when you struggle. To celebrate when you succeed. To love you through the bad days and the good ones. To build a life with you that honors our past but isn't defined by it. I promise to choose you, every day, for the rest of my life. The judge pronounced them married. Kael kissed her softly, reverently, like she was something precious. Their small gathering erupted in applause, and for the first time in her entire life, Oilia felt completely, wholly safe. Ooh. 2 years after Kael's release, the Foundation opened its 5th location. Oilia stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony, surrounded by staff, survivors, and supporters. She'd been asked to give a speech. She looked out at the crowd and found Kael standing in the back, watching with quiet pride. 5 years ago, she began, I was a woman who'd never had a voice, who'd spent years being hurt and silenced, who believed survival was the best I could hope for. Today, I run an organization that's helped over 800 women escape abuse. We've provided housing, legal support, therapy, job training. We've turned survival into thriving. But this foundation isn't just about the women we help. It's about proving that broken things can be rebuilt, that trauma doesn't define us, that we all deserve second chances, the survivors and the people who hurt them. She saw a few confused looks in the crowd. This wasn't the standard survivor speech. I don't believe in redemption without accountability. The man who abused me is in prison for life. He earned that. But I also believe in growth, in change, in the possibility that people can become better than they were. My husband, she gestured to Kael, spent 5.5 years in prison for his crimes. He could have emerged bitter, unchanged. Instead, he emerged humbler, more aware, committed to building something better. He works construction now, volunteers with at-risk youth, lives a quiet, legitimate life. That's a second chance, and it's the kind of future I want to build for everyone, survivors and perpetrators alike. Because healing isn't just about punishment. It's about creating a world where hurt people don't hurt other people, where cycles break instead of repeat. The crowd was silent, processing. So this foundation isn't just for survivors. It's for everyone who wants to break those cycles, everyone who wants to be better, everyone who chooses growth over violence. Oilia smiled. Including me, including my husband, including every person in this room. She cut the ribbon to thunderous applause. Later, Kael found her in the new facility's office. That was brave. It was honest. Oilia leaned against him. We've both come too far to start lying now. People won't understand. They'll say you're forgiving abuse. I'm not forgiving anything. I'm acknowledging complexity. She looked up at him. You did terrible things. You also changed. Both things can be true. Kael kissed her forehead. I don't deserve you. Stop saying that. You deserve to be loved, to be supported, to have someone believe in your growth. She smiled. Just like I deserve those things. We both do. Thus, 5 years after Kael's release, they bought a house. Small, modest. In a quiet neighborhood far from the ruins of the Virelli Empire. They painted walls together, planted a garden, built a life so ordinary it would have been unrecognizable to their younger selves. Kael's parole ended. He was finally, completely free. That night, they sat on their back porch watching fireflies in the growing dark. 10 years, Oilia said quietly, since our first wedding. Feels like a lifetime ago. It was a lifetime ago. We're different people now. Kael took her hand. Better people? I'd like to think so. Oilia laced her fingers with his. Not perfect, still carrying scars, but better. The foundation's expanding again. Elena said you're opening a center in Milwaukee. 10th location, pride colored her voice. We've helped over 1,500 women now, changed 1,500 lives. You changed 1,500 lives. I just work construction and try not to screw up. You mentor kids, volunteer at the community center, show up for parole board hearings to talk about rehabilitation. Oilia squeezed his hand. You're changing lives too, just quieter. They sat in comfortable silence, watching night settle over their modest yard. Two broken people who'd survived hell and built something beautiful from the wreckage. Do you ever regret it? Kael asked suddenly. Everything we went through? Oilia thought about the girl she'd been, silent, terrified, convinced she deserved her suffering. Thought about the war that had destroyed an empire and killed dozens. Thought about the years of prison visits and nightmares and struggling to heal. No, she said finally. I regret the pain, the deaths, the violence, but I don't regret fighting back. Don't regret finding my voice. Don't regret any of it if it led here. Even the parts where I was a criminal? Even those. Because they led to the parts where you changed. She looked at him. You're not who you were, Kyle. Neither am I. We've both earned our second chances. He pulled her closer. I love you. Not sure I say it enough. You say it every day, in 100 small ways. Oilia rested her head on his shoulder. Building this life, supporting my work, choosing different every single day, that's love. They stayed there until the fireflies faded and stars emerged. Two survivors who'd learned that healing wasn't linear or simple or guaranteed, but it was possible, and possible was enough. 12 years after their first wedding, Oilia gave a TED Talk. The organizers had been asking for years. She'd finally agreed. She stood on the stage facing thousands and told her story. Not all of it. Some wounds remained private. But enough. The abuse. The silence. The moment she found her voice. The war that followed. The cost of justice. People ask me if it was worth it, she said near the end. Worth the deaths, the trials, the years of separation. Worth destroying a criminal empire and watching my husband go to prison. Worth all that pain and trauma and loss. She paused. Let the silence stretch. Yes. Because silence has a cost too. Survival without justice destroys you from the inside. I know, I lived it for years. So I chose noise, chose truth, chose justice even when it was messy and complicated and painful. And yes, people died. Lives were destroyed. My husband spent 5.5 years in prison. But over 2,000 women have found safety through the foundation we built from those ashes. 2,000 lives changed, 2,000 voices reclaimed. That's the legacy of choosing to speak. I can't tell you what justice looks like for your situation. Can't promise fighting back won't cost everything. But I can tell you that silence costs more, that healing requires truth, that second chances exist for everyone willing to earn them. She looked out at the crowd. My name is Oilia Virelli. I survived years of abuse. I married into a crime family. I started a war. I watched the man I love go to prison. And I'd do it all again. Because I'm not that silent, terrified girl anymore. I'm a survivor, a fighter, someone who chose herself. And if I can do that, if a girl who whispered, "Please don't hurt me," can become this, then you can too. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Afterward, Kale met her backstage. You killed it. I told the truth. She leaned into him. Think it'll help someone? It already has. He showed her his phone. Social media was exploding with responses. Survivors sharing their own stories, people reaching out for resources. You started something. We started something, Oilia corrected. All those years ago when you believed me, when you chose to fight. We started this together. Kale kissed her temple. Best decision I ever made. Second best, Oilia said. First was changing, becoming someone worthy of a second chance. Third was marrying you again. That one's tied for first. They left the venue hand in hand, walking into the Chicago night. Two people who'd been forged in fire and emerged stronger. Not unscathed, not perfect, but whole in ways that mattered. Behind them, the foundation grew. Survivors found their voices. Lives changed. The ripples of one woman's choice to speak spread wider than she'd ever imagined. And in a small house in a quiet neighborhood, two people built a life that honored their past without being consumed by it. A life of second chances and hard-won peace. A life they chose. Together. Every day. For the rest of their lives.